Chapter 689. The Imperial Advisor stopped in front of the lake and looked at the beautiful and quiet lake. A mysterious smile appeared on his face, and a deep sense of reverence appeared between his brows. Imperial Advisor, there is no path ahead. Where else do you want to lead us? Tang Zheng asked in a deep voice. The Imperial Advisor turned his head to look at him and said, "Who said there's no path?" He stepped on the waves and walked towards the center of the lake. With his cultivation, he could already cross the river on a reed. With a light tap of his foot on the surface of the lake, ripples appeared on the surface of the lake as he quickly walked towards the center of the lake. What is he going to do? Li Xiaotian asked. Tang Zheng shook his head, he could not guess what the other party was thinking. Take good care of Marshall. Tang Zheng handed Marshall over to Li Xiaotian. Even if there really is some scheme, I have no way out. Li Xiaotian hugged Marshall and looked straight at him. She wanted to say something but hesitated. Take care of yourself. Tang Zheng looked at her deeply, then looked at Marshall gently. With a leap, he jumped onto the surface of the lake. The soles of his shoes sank into the lake, but he did not completely fall into the water. However, compared to the Imperial Advisor's leisurely stroll, it was clearly much more difficult for him to walk. Seeing that he had also arrived at the center of the lake, the Imperial Advisor gave him a strange smile and shouted, "Open!" Crack! As if something had been touched, cracking sounds could be heard from the bottom of the lake. The surface of the lake began to fluctuate violently, and in an instant, a huge whirlpool appeared on the surface of the lake. The Imperial Advisor stood by the side of the whirlpool. No matter how powerful the whirlpool was, it was unable to shake him in the slightest. Tang Zheng felt the vibration coming from beneath his feet and was surprised. What was the other party trying to do? Before he could understand, the whirlpool grew bigger and bigger, and a black hole appeared in front of him. The lake water flowed down the edge of the black hole like a huge waterfall. The black hole was incomparably dark, without a single ray of light. It was impossible to see what was below, and a formless fear struck his heart. If you want to save him, then follow me. After the state preceptor finished speaking, he jumped into the black hole. Tang Zheng stretched his neck and found that the imperial tutor's figure had been swallowed by the black hole. He turned his head to look at Li Xiaotian and Marshall who were on the shore. Li Xiaotian looked at him with burning eyes, revealing a faint concern between his brows. He suddenly turned his head and touched Xiaobai on his shoulder, saying, "Xiaobai, let's go and see what's strange down there." Xiaobai nodded heavily, his small eyes filled with a dignified expression. Whoosh! Tang Zheng jumped into the black hole. He heard the sound of wind and the roaring sound of flowing water. As far as the eye could see, there was only darkness. It was like a bottomless pit. He didn't know when it would end, and he didn't know where it would lead. If an ordinary person had fallen into such a black hole, they would have screamed in fear and lost control of their bowels. But Tang Zheng didn't. He was like a calm and wise man, trying to find out what was waiting for him in front. The darkness had completely submerged him, and the state preceptor's figure had long disappeared. A flame blossomed on Tang Zheng's fingertips. In order to disperse the sticky darkness, he ignited the true fire. The purple true fire was exceptionally bright in the darkness, illuminating the surroundings and restoring his line of sight. The fear in his heart gradually subsided. He looked carefully, and his pupils couldn't help but shrink as he exclaimed, "This is a huge cave." He could clearly see the edge of the black hole, the flowing water on the bluestone slabs, covered in moss, and extended downwards to an unknown place. This cave is really deep. Tang Zheng felt that he was about to fall to the earth's core. Why would there be such a strange cave in the state preceptor's mansion? Furthermore, it was built in the center of a lake and set up such a strange mechanism. Suddenly, land appeared below. Tang Zheng was overjoyed. He had finally reached the end. He immediately circulated his innate qi, which continuously rotated under his feet, cancelling out most of the impact. Pang! He landed steadily on the ground, but the impact still shattered the stone slabs under his feet. Where's the state preceptor? He had already raised his guard and looked around vigilantly, but there was no trace of the state preceptor. Since he led me here, he definitely won't hide and not show himself. This is definitely not a dead end, there is still a path ahead. Sure enough, he found a stone door behind the waterfall. The stone door was hidden in the darkness. If he didn't have the true fire in his hand to illuminate it, it would have been extremely difficult to find. After the water from the waterfall fell to the ground, it splashed and flowed along a huge ditch to an unknown place, not accumulating on the ground. Passing through the water curtain, Tang Zheng entered the stone door. A cool breeze blew out from the stone door. There was air convection. This meant that it was not a dead end, so he carefully walked forward, guarding against any sudden attacks. He could already conclude that at this moment, the state preceptor did everything possible to lure him here. It was definitely not just to kill him, but to capture him and obtain his magic. Then the state preceptor would definitely not easily take his life. The state preceptor also understood that Tang Zheng could end his life at any time, so he had to do it in one strike. A small trick would not work at all. Since that was the case, then he had to guard against the state preceptor's big move, a big move that could make him surrender. Ding dong. A crisp sound startled Tang Zheng. He tripped over something hard. What the hell is this? He quickly used the true fire to illuminate the area. His breathing could not help but tighten, and he subconsciously took a step back. A skull. A terrifying skull was placed on the ground. There were still traces of blood on it, as if it had not completely dried up. This. Tang Zheng felt a chill run from the bottom of his feet to the top of his head. Although he was not afraid of this, why would there be a skull here? And it looked relatively fresh, as if it had just died not long ago. Suddenly, he realized something, his eyes widened, and he exclaimed, could it be theirs? Wu Junshan and the others were imprisoned, could this be one of their heads? Once this thought drilled into his mind, it could not be dismissed. He could not help but fall into deep worry. What if it was Lan Yu's? What if it was Wu Junshan's? At this moment, he gradually understood that he did not know when, but he had actually become very concerned about their safety. It was the kind of concern that came from the bottom of his heart, unknowingly and imperceptibly formed. Did he not always have a good impression of the two? How did it become like this? He shook his head hard, but he could not figure it out. In the end, he attributed all of this to the blood relationship, where blood was thicker than water. Although he had always been avoiding this kind of blood relationship, the feelings in the depths of his heart had unknowingly changed. In fact, when he was very young, he looked forward to this kind of relationship very much. Seeing that other children had parents who doted on them while he only had a grandfather, he had also fantasized that his parents would come to his side and give him endless love. In the end, none of this came true, so he buried this extravagant hope in the bottom of his heart. Ever since Lan Yu and Wu Junshan appeared, although he firmly rejected them, unknowingly, the hope buried in the depths of his heart had begun to sprout again, and it had unknowingly grown. At this moment, when he realized that the two of them might really have left him, they were separated by life and death. He could not help but feel a sense of fear. No! Suddenly, he screamed and rushed out like a madman. The wind became colder as if it came from the underworld. Moreover, traces of the smell of blood were also blown by the cold wind, causing one's nerves to involuntarily tighten. Suddenly, the scene in front of him opened up. He had arrived in a huge rock cave, and many stalactites were hanging upside down above his head like sharp swords. Behind the stalactites was an underground river, and the water surged, creating white splashes. The river kept flowing forward, and it was unknown where it flowed. There were some scattered bones on the ground, and Tang Zheng's heart tightened. He could tell that they were human bones, and there were mottled bloodstains scattered around. This place was like hell on earth, causing people to tremble with fear. Hee, you're finally here. The imperial tutor's voice rang out again. He was standing on a high platform not far away, looking down at Tang Zheng from above. Imperial tutor, quickly hand over the person. Tang Zheng's eyes were red with anxiety, and he roared in anger. You want the person, right? As you wish. The imperial tutor said with a smile, his eyes flashing like a cunning fox. The imperial tutor raised his head, pointed above, and said, "Don't you want the person? Isn't that it?" Hearing this, Tang Zheng hurriedly raised his head to look. Where was the person? Seeing Tang Zheng's puzzled expression, the imperial tutor reminded him, "Look carefully, aren't those stalactites people?" Tang Zheng was suddenly startled, and looked over. Ah! Even though he was experienced and knowledgeable, he could not help but let out a cry of surprise. Sure enough, those were not stalactites. They were clearly people hanging upside down, but their bodies were covered by something like crystals, making them unable to move. What exactly is going on? Tang Zheng asked loudly. I always forgot to tell you something. Wu Junshan and the others were not captured by me. The imperial tutor said mysteriously. Tang Zheng's eyelids twitched. This was a problem he had always ignored. Since he could force the imperial tutor with his strength, then with his cultivation, it was impossible for him to take down Wu Junshan and Lan Yu in one fell swoop. One had to know that their strength had already reached the peak of perfection. It was easier said than done to capture them alive. Unless one's cultivation was several levels higher than theirs, it was impossible to succeed. But the fact was that they were captured, so there must be a secret that no one knew. Hearing the imperial tutor admit it himself, Tang Zheng hurriedly asked, "Then who captured them?" When the time comes, you will naturally know." The imperial tutor deliberately mystified. "You have helpers?" Tang Zheng asked, "Aren't you the legendary #1 expert of the island nation? Other than you, who else can do this?" Tang Zheng's heartbeat quickened. This was beyond his expectations. If the imperial tutor had helpers, then wouldn't he be walking right into a trap? Chapter 690. Tang Zheng did not pay attention to the state teacher's sarcasm. Instead, he raised his head and stared at the stalactites. He could vaguely see that the people inside had their eyes closed, indicating that they had already fainted. Who hung them up there? What was the thing that wrapped them up? What was the point of not killing them but hanging them up like specimens? Questions came one after another, and Tang Zheng could not figure them out at all. "Look, you will also become one of them in a while," the state teacher said proudly. "Do the bones on the ground belong to some of them?" Tang Zheng pointed at the bones on the ground and asked with an ashen face. "Of course, who else is here besides them?" The state teacher did not hide anything and admitted it openly. "You killed people, do you still want to humiliate them like this? You even deliberately peeled off the bones. You really are a group of animals, beasts." Tang Zheng was extremely angry. Tang Zheng had also killed enemies before, but after killing them, he would never humiliate the bones of the other party. However, the other party actually pulled out the tendons and skinned them, and even casually threw away these bones. This was already an extremely perverted behavior. Others said that the island nation people were perverted, but who would have thought that it was true? Even the state teacher, a dignified master of a generation, would do such a beastly act. +2. The state teacher did not make a sound, instead he sneered proudly, "You can curse, but in a while, you won't be able to curse anymore. I will pull out all the things in your head. In the future, when I succeed, I will set foot on the land of Huaxia. The unfinished wishes of the ancestors, I will complete them. I will let the sun flag be planted in every corner of Huaxia, every inch of land. All of this is thanks to you, I really have to properly thank you." The madness on the state teacher's face became more and more intense, and the words he said became more and more crazy. He actually had such a wild ambition. Arrogant. Dream on. Not only will I destroy your imperial advisor's residence, I will also go to the imperial palace and completely destroy the spiritual pillar of your island nation. And that sick ghost emperor. Last time, it was a substitute that died in his place. This time, I want his real body to be completely finished. I will burn his bones and scatter his ashes, and he will never be reincarnated. Tang Zheng frowned and glared. He was so angry that his whole body was about to be ignited. He had never cursed someone so viciously before, and had never thought of doing things so ruthlessly. But this time, he really wanted to kill the other party from the bottom of his heart. There were too many scourges in this race, and these scourges had to be completely wiped out. That way, they would be able to prevent them from doing crazy things, and prevent them from continuing to covet the magnificent Huaxia. The imperial teacher said with disdain, "In your dreams, I've finished speaking. Next, your misfortune will truly descend. You can't kill me. Don't tell me you want to find your helper." Although Tang Zheng said it casually, he was already on guard against the other party's possible attack. The imperial teacher smiled mysteriously and cut his palm with his finger. Blood immediately flowed out from his palm and dripped to the ground. Tang Zheng frowned. What was he doing? The blood fell on the high platform under the state teacher's feet. Traces of red light rose from the high platform and illuminated the surroundings. The smell of blood in the air immediately became stronger. The cold wind blew, and the river water churned violently as if it was boiling. Tang Zheng's expression changed slightly as he exclaimed, "What's going on?" "Ha, Tang Zheng, surrender obediently and you will suffer less. Otherwise, it will be too late for you to regret it." The state teacher's voice became ethereal and passed through the strong wind. Tang Zheng subconsciously took 3 steps back. He could clearly feel the danger. Using blood as a guide, what was the state teacher summoning? Tang Zheng could not help but remember the military training experience outside the northwestern border town. The demons also used human blood as a guide. Furthermore, they used a large amount of human blood as a guide to set up a formation and brought back the demon god from the outland. The state teacher was doing the same. Was he also trying to summon something from the outland? No, this was an island nation. It had nothing to do with the outland. Then why was he doing this? Before Tang Zheng could figure out the relationship between them, a wet thing suddenly fell on top of his head. He subconsciously raised his head to look. Suddenly, his heart almost jumped out of his throat. A bloody mouth stopped right on top of his head. The pair of long fangs were terrifying. Demonic beast. This thought immediately appeared in his mind. At the same time, his body had already made the corresponding move. He tapped the tip of his foot and quickly slid backward, trying to avoid this ferocious fellow. Without a doubt, the state teacher used blood as a guide to summon this monster. He did not expect that there would be demonic beasts in the island nation. The ninjutsu of the island nation was only the tip of the iceberg of Huaxia. Its development was far behind Huaxia. At that time, Huaxia was the Celestial Empire. Island nation was equivalent to a primitive society. However, he had never heard of a demonic beast in an island nation. Demonic beasts did not appear casually. At that time, there were no demonic beasts in the western and eastern world. Only in Huaxia would there be demonic beasts. That was because Huaxia was the center of the world. The spiritual energy was the most abundant, and cultivation would be faster there. Which demonic beast would be stupid enough to go to a place with thin spiritual energy? Wouldn't that be going against themselves? Therefore, Tang Zheng was so surprised to see a demonic beast here. Moreover, this demonic beast's cultivation was obviously not low. Squeak squeak. Xiaobai stared at the other party and let out a sharp cry. Xiaobai used to be arrogant when facing the thundercloud beast and even the 5-clawed golden dragon. But now, after a series of fierce battles and being injured, his momentum involuntarily weakened a lot. Hearing Xiaobai's cry, the demonic beast's lantern-like eyes immediately showed suspicion. It was slightly startled, but it did not retreat. Instead, it moved closer. Tang Zheng's heart tightened. This was troublesome. Since the other party was not afraid of Xiaobai, it meant that the other party's cultivation was really not ordinary. No wonder the state teacher was fearless. It turned out that he had such a helper. Tang Zheng immediately realized why Wu Junshan and the others were imprisoned here. Because, in front of this level of demonic beast, Wu Junshan and the others were obviously powerless. When the state teacher saw the demonic beast, his eyes flashed with awe. If Junko was here, perhaps she would understand the state teacher's words. Even if he wanted to release Wu Junshan and the others, it was impossible to do so. Because Wu Junshan and the others had already fallen into the hands of this demonic beast, the state teacher was powerless. Moreover, the state teacher could not really control this demonic beast, which could be seen from the awe in his eyes. Tang Zheng, you have no way out. Resistance is futile. Master Orochi, please restrain him. He has many Chinese spells in his head. The state preceptor urged excitedly. Huaxia God. What the hell is that? Why have I never heard of it? Tang Zheng thought. No one answered his question, because that pair of huge eyes had already burst out a terrifying light, and a pair of fangs directly bit towards Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng continued to retreat. Suddenly, Xiaobai screamed loudly. Tang Zheng was shocked and felt a strong wind behind him. Damn it! He slashed backwards with his sword, but missed. He quickly turned his head to look. Damn! Tang Zheng could not help but curse. Behind him was actually a huge head, with lantern-sized eyes and long fangs, and droplets of saliva dripped down from the fangs. Why are there two demonic beasts? Tang Zheng felt a headache. Just one demonic beast was enough to make him suffer. Two demonic beasts, wouldn't that be asking for his life? But he did not have time to sigh and quickly moved to the left. Bang! He bumped into something hard and elastic, which bounced him back immediately. He looked carefully. Damn! It was another huge head that looked exactly the same. In the darkness, he could not see what he crashed into, but it was definitely the body of this demonic beast. 3 demonic beasts. How could this damn island nation have so many demonic beasts? Was this a zoo? Tang Zheng felt bitter in his mouth, but before he could digest all of this, a few lantern-sized eyes lit up in the darkness. Lantern-like eyes floated above their heads, and there were the same fangs. In the end, there were actually 8 heads. 8 demonic beasts. Tang Zheng really felt like his heart had died. There were actually so many demonic beasts, and each of them was very powerful. How could Tang Zheng deal with them? Xiao Bai's eyes also changed. It was not afraid of anything, but its small eyes revealed a rare look of worry. Ha, Tang Zheng, now you've given up. The state preceptor stood on the high platform, arrogant and proud as he asked. Tang Zheng gritted his teeth and said, you relied on these demonic beasts to catch them, right? Humph, you're smart. Don't think that you're the only one with divine beasts. Our island nation also has divine beasts, and they're much more powerful than your little one. The state preceptor obviously did not admit that they were demonic beasts, but classified these beasts as divine beasts. Tang Zheng snorted, demonic beasts are demonic beasts, where did divine beasts come from? Far-fetched, sticking gold on your face, don't you feel ashamed? If they really talked about divine beasts, perhaps only the 5-clawed golden dragon could be called divine beasts. As for Xiaobai, even the 5-clawed golden dragon could not figure out its origin, so Tang Zheng did not know whether it was a demonic beast or a divine beast. The state preceptor's face flushed red, and he angrily said, you dare to be rude to God Orochi, Tang Zheng, in a moment, you will beg for death. So the so-called state preceptor's biggest reliance is not you, but these demonic beasts. The world has really been deceived by you. As long as you stay, the world will still not know this secret. In the future, when I set foot on the land of Huaxia, the world will see the divine power of Orochi. The state preceptor's eyes shone as he said with yearning. Chapter 691. Tang Zheng rushed towards the stalactite in an attempt to save him. However, just as his body rose into the air, a whooshing sound came from behind him. He cursed inwardly and without turning his head, he stabbed with his sword. Clang! Sparks flew everywhere. The war soul sword stabbed into the incomparably hard scales, only causing a huge head to tilt its direction slightly. However, the other heads had already chased after him like shadows. Two bloody mouths, one above and one below, seemed to want to tear Tang Zheng into two halves. Tang Zheng had no other choice but to save himself. The bright sword light soared into the sky. Since the opponent's scales were so hard, he did not plan to fight head-on. Instead, he planned to use his wits. He cleverly feinted, the sword tip turned, and directly pierced towards a large eyeball. The eyes were definitely the weakest part of a demonic beast, so Tang Zheng concentrated his strength and prepared to attack the eyes. Puff! A bloody light shot out from the eyeball. The blood was like spring water, gushing up more than a meter high. Roar! The demonic beast let out a heart-wrenching scream. A violent stench gushed out from its throat, causing Tang Zheng's stomach to churn. He almost vomited out the food he had last night. However, he gritted his teeth and endured it. The war soul sword tried to stab forward again, but the other head had already rushed over. With a "kacha" sound, the two fangs bit onto the war soul sword. Bang! His head fiercely swung, and Tang Zheng was like a cannonball that was sent flying, fiercely smashing into the stone wall, and tumbling down. The demonic beast's screams echoed in the surroundings. It kept twisting its body. It was obviously in extreme pain. The eyeball was completely covered in blood. This sword caused the eyeball to go blind. Insignificant human, I will eat you. I will swallow the powder you chewed into my stomach. A sharp voice suddenly rang out, echoing in Tang Zheng's ears. Tang Zheng was not surprised. The other party's cultivation was so high that it was normal for him to speak human language. Hearing the other party's words, Tang Zheng's head twitched as if he had understood something. He asked in horror, "You ate the owner of those bones?" "Of course, it won't be long before you join them," the demonic beast said ruthlessly. Tang Zheng glared at him, and his anger flared up. He didn't have much good or bad feelings towards demonic beasts, but this demonic beast actually ate humans. That was absolutely unforgivable. He also finally understood why those people were hung upside down in the air like pieces of bacon. It turned out that they were all food stored by the demonic beasts. "Evil creature, what kind of demonic beast are you?" Tang Zheng asked angrily. "Do you want to see my real body? Then I will fulfill your wish," the demonic beast said proudly. In an instant, the entire cave was filled with rustling sounds, and the waves in the river grew bigger and bigger, as if many things were quietly moving. Tang Zheng's heart tightened, and he was on full alert. Not long after, a huge monster completely appeared from the darkness, almost filling the entire cave. Tang Zheng's eyes gradually widened into circles as he looked at everything in front of him in disbelief. There was only one word in his mind: ferocious. The scene in front of him was too ferocious. If a timid person saw it, they would probably be scared to death. Tang Zheng was experienced and knowledgeable, but he was also deeply shocked. It turned out that his previous understanding was all wrong. The other party was not an 8-headed demonic beast, but a single demonic beast. However, it had 8 heads and 8 tails. This strange combination looked ugly and ferocious. Its entire body was black, covered with scales the size of a face, suffused with a black light. Just now, Tang Zheng's war soul sword was unable to break through the scales, so one could imagine how strong its defense was. It gave people another impression that it was big. It was too big, so big that it almost filled the entire space, but there was still a part of it hidden in the darkness and the river. This was its real body, which made people tremble with fear. Tang Zheng had even seen the 5-clawed golden dragon, but the 5-clawed golden dragon gave people a feeling of heaven's might. But this demonic beast, in addition to being ferocious, was cold, making people feel as if they had fallen into an ice cave. It was a completely different feeling. Immortal, this looks like the legendary Yamada no Orochi. Gue Qiansue's small head suddenly came out of the backpack, looking at everything in front of him, and thoughtfully said, "Yamada no Orochi. What's its origin? Tang Zheng heard that the state preceptor just called the demonic beast as Yamada no Orochi. He was afraid that Yamada no Orochi was its real name. Yamada no Orochi is a very ferocious demonic beast. Its body is a flood dragon, and it especially likes to eat people. Every time it eats 10,000 people, it will grow one more head and one more tail. Therefore, its strength will also increase by leaps and bounds. In order to pursue higher cultivation and strength, it ate people everywhere. Finally, it grew 8 heads and 8 tails. Legend has it that as long as it grows 9 heads and 9 tails, it can enter the dragon gate and transform into a 9-clawed golden dragon. Gue Qiansui said tirelessly. Only the 5-clawed golden dragon was imprisoned in the imperial city, but Yamada no Orochi could transform into a 9-clawed golden dragon. As the name suggests, it must be many times more powerful than the 5-clawed golden dragon. What? It ate tens of thousands of people and killed so many people, and it can still transform into a dragon? Tang Zheng was shocked and felt a chill in his heart. When ordinary people mentioned the famous ancient generals, they would often say that they killed thousands of people, but compared to Yamada no Orochi, they paled in comparison. Not only did it kill people, but it also ate people. It swallowed the bones into its stomach, and it ate tens of thousands of people. This was simply an astronomical number, and it was enough to show its deranged nature. For cultivation and strength, it had completely lost its nature. In Hua Xia's legends, the dragon had always been a righteous image. It was a sacred symbol. For such an evil demon beast to be able to transform into a dragon, it was like a big stone pressing down on one's chest, making one unable to breathe. Yes, exalted immortal. Although it had killed so many people, it still had a chance to transform into a dragon. Back then, it was only a step away from becoming a 9-clawed golden dragon. When it ate the 80,000th person, its 9th head and 9th tail immediately grew out. At that time, it was precisely the time when it transformed into a dragon. It was also the time when it was at its weakest. A very powerful cultivator appeared and fought with it for 81 days. In the end, the newly grown 9th head and 9th tail were cut off, and from then on, its hope of transforming into a dragon was cut off. Who was so powerful? Tang Zheng could not help but have a kind of worship. This cultivator was so great that he could fight against such a powerful evil beast by himself. There was no doubt that if Orochi really transformed into a 9-clawed golden dragon, with its cruel nature, it would definitely cause more killings. The good deed of this Xiuzha had saved countless lives. Gue Qiansui shook his head. I don't know who this cultivator is. Later on, no one knew the whereabouts of Orochi. Some people said it was dead, but no one expected it to survive and hide here. Tang Zheng gradually became enlightened. No wonder Orochi appeared in the island nation. At that time, the island nation was a barren land, and no demon beast or cultivator came here. In order to avoid being hunted down, Orochi crossed the ocean and came to the island nation. That was why it survived until today. Since it was only one step away from becoming a 9-clawed golden dragon, does that mean its cultivation and strength are still ridiculously high? Tang Zheng suddenly realized a serious problem. If it was really so powerful, it would be invincible in this world. With its cruel nature and the tyrannical nature of the island nation, it would be the end of the world. No, when his 9th head and 9th tail were chopped off, most of his power went down the drain. So, its strength was greatly reduced. Otherwise, it would not have to escape to this barren land. Gue Qiansui explained. Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief as he thought that it was a close call. All of this was thanks to the powerful cultivator from back then. If he knew who this person was, then Tang Zheng would definitely thank him. However, I feel that its strength is still very strong. According to the legend, its strength should not be so strong. Gue Qiansui said with some doubts. Tang Zheng had an idea, and said, You mean it has recovered its strength? Yes, and it has recovered a lot. Did it eat a lot of people again? Tang Zheng felt a chill in his bones. Gui Qiansui hesitated, and said, "It's possible." Tang Zheng turned his head and stared at Orochi. He felt more and more disgusted. He did not know how many people were buried in its stomach. The conversation between the two was heard by Orochi and the state preceptor. Orochi twisted its huge body, and looked at Gui Qiansui covetously, and said, "You have heard of my deeds, not simple. Humph, but you know it too late. Now I have recovered half of my strength, and there are no powerful cultivators in this world. So, no one can stop me. I want to eat more people. Moreover, I found that martial artists and cultivators are the most delicious and can increase my strength the most. Therefore, I will eat all the martial artists and cultivators in the world who don't listen to my orders. That way, my strength will recover faster." Orochi's 8 big heads were raised high, ferocious and crazy. Tang Zheng trembled in fear when he heard this. He glanced at the Imperial Preceptor from afar and said with disdain, "Imperial Preceptor, you are really crazy. You are using your own people to feed this evil beast and help it recover its strength. You are helping the tyrant. There will be a day when you will suffer the consequences of your own actions." The state preceptor laughed crazily. "Who said I use my own people to feed Orochi? I will not be so stupid." Tang Zheng's face changed slightly. "Then where did you find so many people?" "Oh, of course, it is Huaxia people. There are so many Huaxia people. Isn't it a small matter to sacrifice tens of thousands of people? Hasn't your country always wanted to control the population? I am doing you a big favor." The state preceptor said ferociously. "You are crazy." Tang Zheng was furious. The state preceptor wanted to kill Huaxia people, and it seemed that many Huaxia people had been buried in Orochi's stomach. No. Tang Zheng suddenly realized a problem. If so many Huaxia people disappeared for no reason, there must be some news. Chapter 692. Shameless, where did you go to kill so many of my compatriots? Tang Zheng asked loudly. Those people were your ancestors. They had already cooked the delicious food of Orochi great god decades ago. The state preceptor said proudly. Tang Zheng raised his eyebrows and couldn't help but be confused. What did this have to do with what happened decades ago? Since you are going to die soon, I am not afraid to tell you. Do you really think that the invasion war was so simple? One of the original intentions of starting this war was to find people to improve the cultivation of Orochi great god, and Huaxia is the country with the largest population near our country. Of course, we fixed our eyes on you. A dusty conspiracy slowly unfolded. Perhaps many of the people involved in the war back then were not aware of this secret. Today, Tang Zheng also felt a sense of horror and absurdity when he heard it. It turned out that there were so many unknown secrets in the war that attracted the attention of the world. In the end, we captured tens of thousands of captives and then helped Orochi great god improve his cultivation. If the war had not ended early and Orochi great god had eaten more people, he would have recovered his former power. Why bother with this? The state preceptor's words seemed to be regretful that he could not capture more Huaxia people. Tang Zheng was already furious. In this world, was there such a cruel and crazy person in the world? Too many Huaxia people died in that war, and many Huaxia people disappeared for no reason. This was a well-known fact. Those missing people must have been transported back to the country by the island nation and then offered to Orochi. Perhaps, Huaxia people did not know about this. The island nation's conspiracy was too deep. Tang Zheng, just you wait. After you die, it won't be long before we set foot on your land again, and then use more people to help Orochi improve his cultivation. At that time, the world will tremble under the iron hooves of the island nation. The state preceptor was enraptured, as if he could see the day he described. Tang Zheng's face kept changing, from red to green, and then to black. His mood was really fluctuating, and anger was running through every cell of his body. State preceptor, keep dreaming. That day will never come. Huaxia is no longer what it used to be. Even if I really die, the people of Huaxia will definitely rise up and fight back. They will kick you out of our country like beating a drowning dog. Tang Zheng said vehemently. The state preceptor was unmoved and said, "Hee, then we shall wait and see. However, you will not be able to see that day." Then, he changed the topic and said respectfully to Orochi, "Orochi, this person not only injured your eyes, which is an unforgivable crime. Moreover, if you let him leave and make news about you public, it will definitely attract enemies to deal with you. Therefore, you must keep him here." Orochi shook his head and wagged his tail. "I don't need you to command me. I will capture him alive and take all the knowledge in his head for my own use." The state preceptor nodded enviously and did not dare to say more. He retreated to the side and left the battlefield to Orochi. Orochi slithered, and his huge body had already surrounded Tang Zheng from all directions. Tang Zheng was like a sandwich biscuit, surrounded in the center. Tang Zheng clenched his teeth as he understood that this was a battle to the death. If he were to live, he would be able to expose Japan's conspiracy to the public. If he were to die, then perhaps China would really face a huge disaster. Therefore, he must fight with all his strength. Bah! He spat a mouthful of saliva and rubbed his palms. He touched Whitey on his shoulder and Gue Qiansui in his backpack and said, "This is a life-and-death battle. We can only fight to the death." Xiao Bai nodded heavily and squeaked in response to Tang Zheng's mobilization. Gue Qiansui jumped out of the backpack and landed on the ground. He said, "Immortal, you will be invincible. We can definitely leave here safely." Tang Zheng nodded and said to Xiao Bai on his shoulder in a low voice, "Xiao Bai, I will hold off Orochi, and you go and save the hanging people." Xiao Bai seemed to understand and nodded. Tang Zheng took a deep breath and took the lead to take a step forward. He rushed up with War Soul in his hand and shouted, "Kill!" Whoosh! When Transcendent Flying Immortal was used, a series of exquisite sword moves immediately greeted Yamada no Orochi. Yamada no Orochi blinked contemptuously, and its huge body began to move. This space was too narrow, and it could not fully exert its advantage of being a huge monster. Its fighting power was limited a lot. Tang Zheng relied on his nimble movements to engage in a fierce battle with it. He was like a dancing butterfly, shuttling between the fangs of Yamada no Orochi and its huge tail. He was surrounded by danger. The War Soul sword slashed at the scales of the Yamada no Orochi, creating sparks. It was like a dazzling firework, illuminating this narrow space more and more. The darkness was dispelled, and Orochi's body was revealed. Tang Zheng's heart was beating like a drum. If there was enough space to display its full strength, it would be hundreds of meters long, which was a bit bigger than the Thundercloud beast's body. Such a huge body had been hiding in this small space. No one knew if it felt aggrieved. Tang Zheng held back Yamada no Orochi. Even though his cultivation was much weaker, he had learned too many things. As long as he was not surrounded by danger, he would often have many tricks up his sleeve to turn danger into safety. At this moment, he was no longer limited to the Heaven-Flying Immortal Sword technique. Although the Heaven-Flying Immortal Sword technique could make him flustered against the Imperial Advisor, it might not be useful against Orochi. Therefore, the Wind-Chasing Sword technique, Heaven-Shocking Bow and Sun-Shooting Arrow were all used by Tang Zheng at the right time. Weapons and martial arts were used interchangeably, causing people to be dazzled and Orochi to go crazy. "You are so young, yet you know so many spells and so many powerful treasures. Who taught you this anomaly?" Orochi asked angrily. Tang Zheng coldly snorted, and said, "I, your grandfather, am a self-taught genius. You're courting death." After being scolded, Orochi flew into a rage, and its attack suddenly became even sharper. Tang Zheng's situation was no longer optimistic. Boom! A huge tail swept over fiercely. Tang Zheng already had no way to retreat, and even the War Soul sword was unable to hastily fight back. Tang Zheng immediately activated the 9 revolutions Vajra technique. His entire body was like steel, preparing to take this attack head-on. Immortal, let me do it. It was unknown when Gui Qiansui arrived in front of Tang Zheng, but it suddenly became bigger, like a huge shield, blocking in front of Tang Zheng. Bang! The huge tail swept across the turtle shell, producing a loud muffled sound. Tang Zheng could clearly see the pain in Gui Qiansui's eyes, and his heart tightened. Previously, when the Imperial Tutor's broken sword slashed on its turtle shell, it did not feel so much pain. It could be imagined that Orochi's attack was much stronger than the Imperial Tutor's attack. Gui Qiansui endured this attack without moving an inch, afraid that it would hurt Tang Zheng. Ever since Gui Qiansui followed Tang Zheng, not only did Tang Zheng give him cultivation techniques, he also took care of him. But he did not report too much to Tang Zheng. In this life and death situation, he naturally had to stand up and fight for Tang Zheng. He knew how powerful Orochi was, but he still did not retreat, which showed his intention. Tang Zheng also saw Gui Qiansui's intention from this action. At that time, it was a coincidence that he took Gui Qiansui in. Perhaps, deep in his heart, he still had a grudge against Gui Qiansui's actions. But when Yamada no Orochi's attack landed on Gui Qiansui's body, the grudge in Tang Zheng's heart was immediately shattered into pieces, and there was nothing left. A little turtle wants to be a hero, blocking my way. You're courting death. Orochi's anger was strong, and he did not hide his contempt for Gui Qiansui. Bang! Another huge tail swept Gui Qiansui, and the pain in Gui Qiansui's eyes became more intense, and he staggered forward. His cultivation was much lower than Orochi's. If he did not rely on his race's natural defense advantage, he would not be Orochi's opponent at all. But even so, it was a little overwhelmed after taking 2 hits head-on. Seeing this, Tang Zheng shouted, Gui Qiansui, I'll do it. Like a whirlwind, he bypassed Gui Qiansui and went to meet the huge tail, and the War Soul sword had been slashed out. However, that giant tail was just a feint. On the other side, another giant tail quietly appeared. Tang Zheng did not have time to defend and only heard a muffled sound as the sky and earth spun. He saw stars and his throat felt sweet as he spat out a mouthful of blood. You overestimate yourself. Orochi said disdainfully. While Tang Zheng was still in the air, 2 huge tails flew in the air and rolled him with lightning speed. Crack! Crack! With a crisp sound of bones, Tang Zheng spat out a big mouthful of blood. He really felt that his bones were about to be crushed by the huge twisting force. He quickly ran the 9 transformation Vajra tactics, which offset the twisting force, but he had been rolled up and could not move at all. Was he going to be captured like this? At the same time, Xiaobai had quietly jumped on the roof and came to the stalactites. The small mouth took a few deep breaths, and suddenly spat out a huge flame. Whoosh! The amber-like surface melted immediately, and a series of falling sounds were heard. One by one, the pieces of meat fell to the ground, and the amber on the surface was immediately shattered. One by one, they woke up. In an instant, dozens of people stood up. Although they were a little embarrassed, they were like peerless divine soldiers, full of endless fighting spirit. Everyone's eyes were burning with rage. Although they were imprisoned and couldn't move, their consciousness hadn't disappeared. Every day, they were immersed in endless pain. It was not the pain of facing death, but the pain of watching their companions die in the mouth of Orochi. They could not do anything, and this feeling almost made them collapse. Of course, the conspiracy of Orochi and the island nation made them even angrier. It turned out that there were so many conspiracies hidden in the war decades ago. Martial arts sect also participated in that war, and many people were sacrificed, so that feeling was even more empathetic. Chapter 693. With so many people suddenly regaining their freedom, the killing intent they emitted caused one's heart to sway. The Imperial Grandmaster's heart couldn't help but jump a few times, but when he saw the Yamada no Orochi, his worries immediately disappeared. With the Yamada no Orochi here, all enemies were paper tigers that couldn't withstand a single blow. Lan Yu saw Tang Zheng, who was tangled in a ball by the giant tail, and her beautiful eyes immediately turned red. She was as cold as a knife as she shouted, "Let him go." Before she finished speaking, she had already rushed out like an arrow. Like a willow catkin, she lightly landed on Yamada no Orochi's body. She kicked off the pitch-black scales with the tips of her feet and flew up. A slender hand reached out, and 2 fingers grabbed onto a protruding piece of the scale as if they were picking a flower. "Break!" An earth-shattering word came out of Lan Yu's mouth. Her fingers immediately brought about a bloody light, and the scale armor was actually removed by her. Roar! A roar mixed with pain came from the bloody mouth, and the giant tail that was wrapping around Tang Zheng couldn't help but loosen a little. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up, and he jumped out. The War Soul Sword immediately slashed out a ray of fire on the scale armor, and with the help of the rebound, he landed on the ground far away. Looking up, he saw that the slim figure was still standing on the huge body, holding the huge black scale armor. She stood proudly and glared at the Yamada no Orochi. "I'm going to eat you." The Yamada no Orochi shook its head and bit towards Lan Yu with its bloody mouth. Lan Yu did not move. She waved her hand forward, and the scale armor between her fingers flew out with a whoosh. Like a black bolt of lightning, it shot towards the bloody mouth. Ka-cha! The scale armor accurately hit a fang that was shining with a cold light. With a crisp sound, the fang was broken into 2. Roar! Another even more miserable cry rang out. It shook the heavens and the earth, causing the rocks on the ceiling to fall down. 5 giant tails swept towards Lan Yu at the same time. Whiz! Lan Yu retreated lightly, but the giant tail followed her like a shadow. Its speed was even faster than Lan Yu's, and it caught up with her in an instant. Lan Yu's expression changed slightly. She clenched her teeth and prepared to turn around to face the enemy. However, as she was in midair, her attack power was inevitably greatly reduced. Right at this moment, a pair of large hands appeared behind her. The palms flipped and drew 9 circles. In an instant, an endless stream of energy gushed out from the circles, blocking the giant tails. When Lan Yu saw the man beside her, she couldn't help but feel relieved. Of course, this was Wu Junshan. His yin-yang harmony art had already been cultivated to perfection. His ability to use softness to overcome hardness and weakness to overcome strength could be said to have reached perfection. Bang! There was a shocking sound of impact, and the shockwave spread in all directions. Stones kept falling from the walls. Go! Wu Junshan pulled his wife's hand and quickly retreated, avoiding Orochi's attack range. The Imperial Preceptor looked at this scene with a gloomy expression. He was greatly shocked. In his mind, Orochi was a lofty and inviolable existence. However, these people had actually injured it. Moreover, Lan Yu's elegant posture and Wu Junshan's unfathomable yin-yang harmony art made the Imperial Preceptor feel a chill run down his spine. Only now did he truly experience the strength of the warriors in Huaxia. Moreover, it wasn't the strength of a single person, but the strength of many. This was a kind of accumulation, and it was impossible for a newly risen island nation to have such accumulation. The Imperial Preceptor often thought that if the island nation had a few powerhouses like him, they could start another war and set foot on the rich land of Huaxia even without the help of Orochi's divine power. But now, it seemed that his idea was absurd and laughable. Even if there were a few Grandmaster stage powerhouses like him, if they stepped into Huaxia, they would only be able to enter vertically and come out horizontally. At this moment, he couldn't help but rejoice that the island nation had the protection of Orochi. This was the blessing of the heavens for the island nation. Otherwise, if the island nation wanted to rise, it would be a fool's dream. He looked at these dozens of experts, and his eyes had already turned as cold as snow. He muttered to himself, "What's the use of you escaping? You're still going to be a delicious meal in Orochi's stomach." Humph. Thus, he looked down from above, ready to enjoy the moving scene of Orochi eating them one by one. Orochi raised its head high, and its 8 heads looked down at the crowd from above. Only 15 of its 16 lantern-sized eyeballs were left. The blood from the eyeballs that had been blinded by the War Soul sword had already stopped, but they had turned blood red and lost their light. There were only 15 of its long fangs left. The broken fangs were like a huge mockery, silently mocking Orochi's arrogance and conceit. Lan Yu and Tang Zheng, this pair of mother and son, had both given Orochi a heavy blow. Facing the condescending Orochi, everyone subconsciously gathered together. Lan Yu impatiently grabbed onto Tang Zheng's hand, tears flowing down her cheeks. In fact, she was a very strong person deep down in her bones. In terms of martial arts, she was not inferior to her country. However, at this moment, her mother's nature was acting up. Her usual strength collapsed and was shattered by the impact of her tears. After surviving a calamity, Lan Yu's feelings were especially deep. Ever since she had set up camp on the island, her thoughts towards Tang Zheng had been like a torrential river, accumulating over time, becoming deeper and deeper. However, she knew that Tang Zheng had a grudge against her, so she didn't dare to call him personally. Every time, she would ask about Tang Zheng from Wu. She even recorded her conversation with Wu, and every time she thought of Tang Zheng, she would play the recording. Although she couldn't hear Tang Zheng's voice, listening to Wu talk about Tang Zheng's life was also a great happiness, and could slightly ease her longing. She often thought that if there was a day when Tang Zheng was able to completely open his heart and forgive her, that would be the greatest fortune of her life. Her life would truly be complete. However, she knew that this was practically an extravagant hope. She didn't know how long it would take for it to come true. However, before she could wait for that day, she was captured by Orochi. She realized that her life was about to come to an end, and her longing for Tang Zheng grew by the day. At the same time, she regretted not being able to stay by Tang Zheng's side, not being able to participate in his growth, not being able to fulfill her duties and responsibilities as a mother. She felt that she had truly failed in this life. But there was no way to salvage all of this. She couldn't even see Tang Zheng for the last time. However, the situation had taken a turn, and Tang Zheng had actually come to save them. This caused her to be wild with joy, but at the same time, she felt extremely ashamed. She couldn't do anything for him, but he actually came from afar to save them. This action caused her to be unable to show her face, but at the same time, she was incomparably moved. Therefore, when she saw Tang Zheng being trapped by Orochi, her heart felt as if it was being twisted by a knife. Once she was free, she would risk her life to save him. Holding Tang Zheng's hand and looking at him from such a close distance, Lan Yu was both moved and heartbroken. All sorts of feelings welled up in her heart, and tears streamed down her cheeks. Tang Zheng couldn't help but be moved. There were thousands of words stuck in his chest, but he couldn't say them. "You really are a silly child. It was so dangerous, but you still came to save us," Lan Yu said with a choked voice. Wu Junshan also patted Tang Zheng's shoulder twice. Although he didn't say a word, thousands of words were expressed in this action. "You still have the leisure to reminisce? I'll eat you first." Orochi saw that he was ignored, and felt that his dignity had been swept to the ground. He roared in anger. Lan Yu raised her head and said, "This ugly monster is so annoying. It ate so many of our compatriots. Kill it, cut open its stomach, skin it, and pull out its tendons." "That's right. Last time, we were tricked by it, and that was why we were captured. This time, it won't be so easy," everyone said excitedly. Tang Zheng's heart moved, and he asked curiously, "How did you get caught here?" "It's all because of this damned Yamada no Orochi. One day, it attacked our island. We didn't expect it to be so powerful. While we were fighting, it suddenly spat out a large amount of poisonous fog. We were careless and inhaled the poisonous fog. We were caught by it and brought here," Lan Yu said indignantly. Tang Zheng suddenly realized that the traces of battle he saw on the island must have been left behind by the Yamata no Orochi when he fought with them. It was just that no one expected the Yamata no Orochi to be able to spit out poisonous mist, which was why so many people were plotted against. Otherwise, with their cultivation, how could they have been annihilated without a sound? Tang Zheng raised his head, looked at the imperial advisor from afar, and said, "Since you have already captured them, why did you send a warship to bombard the island? Why bother? If it wasn't for the fact that he and Wu coincidentally encountered the warship bombing the island, they probably wouldn't have been able to find them even if they dug 3 feet into the ground. It was even more impossible for them to track them down and save them from the bloody mouth of the Orochi. No one in the world knows of the existence of the Orochi. In order to cover up the whereabouts of the Orochi, we must bomb that island," the imperial advisor said arrogantly. "Since it was the Li Palace who told you their whereabouts, could it be that the Li Palace doesn't know of the existence of the Orochi?" Tang Zheng asked suspiciously. The imperial advisor laughed complacently. "Of course not, only the imperial advisor and the heavenly emperor know of the existence of the Orochi. No one else in the world knows of its existence. The Li Palace is thousands of miles away, how could they know? Then why did they tell you this news?" "Of course I can guess 1 or 2 of the Li Palace's thoughts. They saw that the island nation's strength was getting stronger and stronger, so they deliberately used this incident to test our strength. I was just pushing the boat with the current. These people are not ordinary people, but martial artists, and there are even great master martial artists. The effect of eating them is 100 or 1,000 times better than eating ordinary people. It will allow the Orochi's cultivation to recover faster. So you did not hesitate to expose the true strength of the island nation to capture them?" Tang Zheng suddenly realized. Chapter 694. Hearing this, Tang Zheng was enlightened. So there was such a secret. Moreover, Li Xiaotian did not tell him the complete truth. This woman was already at the final juncture of life and death, yet she was still hiding things from him. The Li Palace was truly sinister. They actually used the lives of Wu Junshan and the others to test the imperial advisor's residence. They had truly placed a large enough bait. When Wu Junshan and the others heard that they were trapped because of the Li Palace's instigation, they gnashed their teeth in anger. Back then, when the martial sect fell apart, Granny Li was also present. She even supported a few elders, forcing Wu Junshan to leave the martial sect. Thus, they had long regarded the Li Palace and Granny Li as enemies. Now, with the old and new grudges added together, they could not wait to kill their way into the Li Palace and take revenge. Of course, Wu Junshan was also furious, but he controlled himself for the time being. He was rather shocked. The island he had chosen was extremely well hidden, and no one else knew about it. Yet the Li Palace had managed to find their tracks in just a few short months. This intelligence network was absolutely terrifying. Wu Junshan shook his head and muttered, "From what I know of the Li Palace, their intelligence network is limited to within the country. They are not very developed outside of the country. How could even that island not escape their sharp eyes? No, there must be a problem." Plus or minus, suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. His expression became serious. Could this be related to the mysterious power behind Granny Li? Wu Junshan had always guessed that there was an even deeper boss behind Granny Li and the elders. This person had always been behind the scenes, unwilling to show himself. However, to be able to make someone as arrogant as Granny Li submit, this person was definitely not an ordinary person. This person's strength and influence were probably more powerful than Wu Junshan had imagined. Then it was not completely impossible for this person to be able to track their whereabouts. Everything could be explained. Although he had figured it all out, Wu Junshan could not feel happy. This meant that he and his subordinates would have nowhere to hide in the future. In this vast world, there was probably no place for them to hide. Wu Junshan faintly sighed. Lan Yu keenly sensed his low mood and asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Wu Junshan calmed himself down and put on a cold face. He said in an unquestionable tone, "You guys go first. I'll cover you. Especially since you're injured, Tang Zheng. You can't stay here any longer. This place is too dangerous. Sect Master, we won't leave. We want to fight alongside you." The others said resolutely, as if they were ready to sacrifice themselves for a cause. "This is an order. Are you going to disobey?" Wu Zhenshin's face darkened as he shouted. Immediately, no one refuted him, but their eyes were filled with reluctance to part with him. However, Tang Zheng stubbornly raised his neck and said indifferently, "I'm not your subordinate. You have no right to order me around." Wu Junshan revealed an awkward expression and said resentfully, "You're injured, don't force yourself." Tang Zheng snorted coldly and declined to comment. Lan Yu grabbed Tang Zheng's hand tightly and said, "Listen to him. We'll bring up the rear. You go first." Tang Zheng looked deeply at her and firmly shook his head. "Ha, you guys are just going back and forth like this. What do you think this place is? You think you can come and go as you please?" The state teacher saw this and mocked. Wu Junshan raised his eyebrows and glanced at the state teacher like lightning. He said in a deep voice, "There's no need for you to be so noisy. I'll kill you first." Before he finished speaking, he had already launched an attack at the state teacher. The state teacher was shocked. He pointed forward and the river water soared into the sky, turning into a rain of swords that shot towards Wu Junshan. Wu Junshan drew a circle with his hands and the rain of swords shrunk inward. In an instant, they were completely trapped by the circle and turned into a ball of water. "Go!" With a shout, Wu Junshan pushed his hands outwards. The ball of water was like a meteor flying from the sky, fiercely smashing towards the state teacher. The state teacher wanted to dodge, but found that he couldn't. Thus, he watched as the water ball grew bigger and bigger in his eyes. Bang! With a loud bang, the ball of water hit his chest. Immediately, his chest quickly caved in, and he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. He was like a kite with a broken string, ruthlessly smashing into the cave wall behind him. All of this happened in a flash. The others only saw a shadow in front of them, and everything was over. Wu Junshan wanted to take advantage of the victory to give the state teacher a fatal blow, but Yamada no Orochi had already reacted. This person actually injured the state teacher in front of its eyes, which was a great insult to it. Thus, with a deafening roar, the 8 heads and tails moved side by side, attacking Wu Junshan and everyone else. "None of you can escape." A mouthful of black fog spewed out from the bloody mouth, floating towards everyone. "Be careful, it's this poisonous fog," Wu Junshan warned loudly. Everyone hurriedly held their breaths, not inhaling a trace of the poisonous fog. These people were all extraordinary martial artists. Holding their breaths was a small matter. All of a sudden, everyone held their breaths and fought with Yamada no Orochi. It had to be said that although this huge monster's combat power was limited by space, at the same time, the others were also limited by space. In such a narrow space, Yamada no Orochi's attack could reach any area, so no one could escape from its attack alone. Rumble. The earth shook, and the mountains shook. The battle was too intense. Yamada no Orochi was fighting against everyone alone, but it was not at a disadvantage at all. Instead, some people fell to the ground due to their lack of strength, injuring their muscles and bones. In the corner, the state teacher struggled to get up, wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were blood red, like a poisonous snake staring at its prey. He spat out a mouthful of blood, gritted his teeth, and said in a low voice, "All of you must die. I want all of you to die. None of you are a match for Yamada no Orochi." The black poisonous fog shrouded the entire space, and the light became dimmer. However, what was worse was that some people had already started coughing. Although everyone could hold their breath for a while, they couldn't do so for long. The air here was completely poisoned, and there was no way to breathe. Without air, they couldn't even maintain their lives, let alone fight. As expected, someone couldn't hold his breath and took a deep breath. Suddenly, the world seemed to be spinning, and he fell to the ground with a thud. The others were in the same situation. Wu Junshan and the others cursed inwardly. If this continued, they would be captured again. If they were really captured, there was no hope of survival. What should they do? Wu Junshan was burning with anxiety, and his moves couldn't help but be a little more disrupted. Yamada no Orochi took advantage of this opportunity and swept his huge tail at Wu Junshan's waist, immediately throwing him far away. He only stopped when he hit the wall. Sect Master! The others turned pale with fright and cried out. Unable to hold his breath, another person fell to the ground. For a moment, the battle became more and more chaotic. The scales of victory immediately tilted, and everyone felt the pressure multiplied. Tang Zhen gritted his teeth, and his cheeks were already red. He thought to himself, this can't go on. I must find a way to get fresh air. However, the way out was blocked by Yamada no Orochi, so they had no chance to escape. Upper Immortal, quickly come in here. Suddenly, Gue Qiansui's voice sounded. A huge bubble floated on the ground, and Tang Zheng felt his body become light as he was covered by the bubble. Fresh air. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up, and he took a deep breath. His limbs and bones felt unprecedentedly comfortable. His heart moved, and he immediately remembered that in the South Sea, Gue Qiansui used a bubble to cover everyone, and then they could travel freely in the sea. Tang Zheng patted his head, why didn't I think of this trick? Gue Qiansui, quickly help the others. Tang Zheng quickly shouted. Yes, Upper Immortal. Gue Qiansui accepted the order and quickly opened his mouth. Bubbles came out from his mouth and wrapped around everyone. Huff! Everyone was relieved and took a deep breath. This long-awaited fresh air was too rare. Seeing this, the State Master's eyes turned red with envy. Gue Qiansui really had many tricks up his sleeves. He even created such a bubble, which was equivalent to dissolving Yamada no Orochi's poisonous fog. Yamada no Orochi saw that his trump card was ineffective and became angrier. You little tortoise, how dare you ruin my plan? I will kill you first. Its ferocious mouth immediately bit down. Gue Qiansui was not agile enough and could not escape. He fell directly into Yamada no Orochi's mouth and was bitten by its two fangs. Gue Qiansui saw that the situation was not good, and immediately retracted his body into the tortoise shell, leaving only the shell to resist Yamada no Orochi's fangs. If you were to cultivate for another 1,000 years, perhaps I wouldn't be able to do anything to this damn tortoise shell of yours. However, you're still too inexperienced right now. Break for me. The other head said agitatedly. With a cracking sound, it was as if something had shattered. Ah! Gue Qiansui immediately let out a heart-wrenching scream. Tang Zheng's heart tightened. Although Gue Qiansui's tortoise shell was hard, it could not withstand Yamada no Orochi's fangs. He had to save Gue Qiansui and could not watch him die. Evil beast, I will fight with you. Tang Zheng roared. He pulled the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrow. He loosened his fingers and the shooting sun arrow shot towards that damned head. Ha, you want to save it? Dream on. I want you to watch it die. Yamada no Orochi proudly laughed as it shook its head and swung its tail. The other head and tail blocked the shooting sun arrow, leaving Tang Zheng with no way to deal with it. Tang Zheng was burning with anxiety. If he delayed any longer, Gue Qiansui would be dead. Seeing this, Wu Junshan, Lan Yu and the others also rushed out of the bubble at the same time. They held their breath and attacked Yamada no Orochi, trying to save Gue Qiansui from its mouth. Just at this time, Li Xiaotian's figure appeared at the door. She held Marshall in her arms and shouted, "Be careful, there is an enemy." Enemy? Chapter 695. After Li Xiaotian shouted, she was stunned by the scene in front of her. She was also someone who had fought in the Myriad Mountains, but she was still shocked by the scene in front of her. Quickly hold your breath, there's poison in the air. Seeing that she was still in a daze, Tang Zheng hurriedly reminded her. Li Xiaotian seemed to have awoken from a dream. She hurriedly circulated her energy and held her breath, but her eyes were still fixed on the scene in front of her. Wu Junshan, Lan Yu, and the others' heroic figures swayed her heart. She was the holy maiden of the Li Palace. Since she was young, she had heard of the two's illustrious names. Subconsciously, she had been instilled with the idea of competing with them in the future. But today, it seemed that the gap between her and them was too great. Looking at their heroic figures in battle, she couldn't help but be fascinated. Boom! With a loud sound, the earth quaked and the entire cave shook. The stones at the top fell down with a crash, and the river water surged several meters high. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly asked, "What's going on?" Even Yamada no Orochi had a suspicious look in his eyes. "Which enemy is here?" Tang Zheng's heart moved as he hurriedly asked. Li Xiaotian was just about to answer when suddenly, with a crack, a forecrack appeared above her head. An incomparably tyrannical power pierced through her head. "Quickly dodge!" Wu Junshan shouted and hurriedly stood in front of Tang Zheng. He hurriedly used the yin-yang harmony art. In the blink of an eye, 9 circles were drawn in front of him. A steady stream of energy gushed out and neutralized that terrifying power. But even so, he still couldn't stop himself from retreating several steps before coming to a stop. The others weren't as lucky as Tang Zheng. A few of them couldn't dodge in time and were directly struck by that power. Bang! 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 With a series of explosions, those people were blasted into a bloody mist. Everyone was aghast. Just what was going on? Who had launched this attack, and such a powerful one at that? Tang Zheng looked at the tall figure in front of him, his emotions fluctuating. At the critical moment, he actually risked his life to protect him. That action seemed to be a subconscious action without much thought. It was precisely this primitive impulse hidden in the depths of his heart that touched Tang Zheng's nerves. Does he really care about me that much? Tang Zheng's mind was in turmoil as he stared blankly at the back of this figure. When he was growing up, he had looked forward to the appearance of such a figure countless times. He had once learned a text called Back View. The teacher had asked him to write an essay to describe his father's back view. The other students could write beautifully, but he was at a loss for words. This was because he was a child without a father. How could he have a father? However, at this very moment, that figure appeared. He was tall and mighty, blocking that terrifying strike. His lamentation did not last long because the rumbling sound above his head was still ongoing. After this attack, a bright light pierced through the top of his head, completely illuminating every corner. Only then did everyone see the true appearance of Yamada no Orochi. It was even bigger than before, like a small mountain. Hua! The lake water penetrated through the crack like a huge waterfall, instantly drenching everyone. Roar! Yamada no Orochi looked up to the sky and roared. Its anger seemed to evaporate the lake water. The poisonous fog was washed away by the lake water, and the air was fresh again. Tang Zheng took advantage of the opponent's distraction to jump to the mouth of Yamada no Orochi like a flash of lightning. With a move of heaven-flying immortal, the war soul sword fiercely slashed at the fangs that were biting Gue Qiansui. Kacha! The 2 fangs were cut in half. Tang Zheng grabbed Gue Qiansui and kicked the top of Yamada no Orochi's head to fly back. Seeing the delicious food in its mouth fly away, Yamada no Orochi was furious and twisted its body like a crazy demon. Rumble! Sand and stones were flying, and the cave could not hold on for long. It was on the verge of collapse, as if it could completely collapse at any time. Tang Zheng stroked Gue Qiansui's turtle shell and saw a small crack appear on the turtle shell. Blood was faintly seeping out. Tang Zheng was shocked. If he was a few steps slower, Gue Qiansui would have been bitten to pieces. Gue Qiansui, how are you? Gue Qiansui's head came out of the turtle shell. His small eyes were still filled with pain. He stammered, "Immortal, I am fine. Don't talk, I will take you out of here. I will find a way to heal you." Tang Zheng said. Gui Qiansui shook his head, "Immortal, you don't have to worry. I will cultivate for a few days and naturally can heal this wound. We turtles are one of the longest living species. Are you really okay?" "Yes." Tang Zheng was slightly relieved and carefully put Gui Qiansui into his backpack. At this time, Li Xiaotian also came to Tang Zheng's side and couldn't wait to say, "100 Change Star Lord is here." 100 Change Star Lord. Tang Zheng and Wu Junshan were shocked at the same time. The two of them had fought with the 100 Transformation Star Sovereign before, so they knew how powerful he was. Why did he come here again? Tang Zheng frowned deeply. Wasn't 100 Change Star Lord in the 100,000 mountains? And last time, he sent the demon god to the outside world to try to recruit people to start the Mountain River Blood Sacrifice Array. After this plot was thwarted by Tang Zheng, why did 100 Change Star Lord turn to the island nation? Strange, this is too strange. Everyone be careful, 100 Change Star Lord is not a friend, and he is super powerful. Everyone gather together, we will rush out and find a chance to escape. It was not good to stay in this place for long. It was better to leave first. No matter what 100 Change Star Lord's purpose was, it was not good to fight with him. Otherwise, this small number of people was not enough to fill the gap between his teeth. The crack above their heads was getting bigger and bigger, and they could see the blue sky and white clouds above clearly. But everyone's eyes were immediately attracted by a person floating in the air. It was a delicate child with a picturesque face, like a fairy in a painting. Who else could it be but 100 Change Star Lord? Tang Zheng and the others had a deep impression of him. Even though he looked harmless, in fact, he was a great devil. If they were not careful, they would die under his evil hands. 100 Faces Star Lord stared at the scene in the big hole with his big black eyes. The first thing that attracted his attention was Orochi. He smiled faintly and said, "You are really here, you big snake." Orochi obviously did not know how powerful 100 Change Star Lord was. He looked up to the sky and hissed, "Where did this little kid come from? I will eat you too." "Oh, he likes to eat people. Hee hee, that's great." 100 Change Star Lord's eyes lit up. He nodded his little head and said seriously, "If ordinary people heard about eating people, they would be scared out of their wits." But 100 Change Star Lord was very surprised. Demonic beasts should have the nature of demonic beasts. Eating people is good. Huh? Orochi had never heard such words from a human. He could not help but be stunned. He looked at 100 Change Star Lord suspiciously. "Who exactly are you? Your future master must have a little servant like you. It must be fun." 100 Change Star Lord said seriously. He did not seem to be joking. Tang Zheng and the others heard this and their hearts skipped a beat. It turned out that 100 Change Star Lord was here to subdue Orochi. If he had Orochi, then 100 Change Star Lord's strength would reach a higher level. Perhaps more people would be harmed. Orochi obviously did not expect this answer. After being stunned for a moment, he laughed wildly. But the anger in his laughter was obvious. "Who do you think you are? How dare you say that you can subdue me?" Orochi said angrily and found it funny. Ever since he came to this world, no one had ever dared to say such arrogant words to him. "You have personality. I like it. Alas, I really want to thank the demon god for giving me this information. Otherwise, I wouldn't know that there is a little guy like you in the island nation." 100 Change Star Lord sighed. Such a huge monster was called a little guy. It was ridiculous. However, Tang Zheng and the others knew that 100 Change Star Lord was a figure from the ancient times tens of thousands of years ago. Although he had a pink face, he was already a shrewd old man. It was not an exaggeration to call Orochi a little guy. What is a demon god? Yamada no Orochi asked in shock. Its whereabouts were top secret. It thought that only the state preceptor and the emperor knew about it. How could this demon god know about it? 100 Change Star Lord did not seem to intend to attack immediately. He patiently answered Orochi's questions. He said methodically, the demon god is a member of the demon clan. In order to return to this world, the demon clan sent him to this world. Your information was given to him by the higher-ups of the demon clan. Do you really think that your whereabouts are top secret? The demon clan used to be very powerful. There are not many things in this world that can be hidden from them. Of course, your whereabouts are no exception. It's just that they don't want to disclose it to the public. Orochi's expression changed when he heard this. Of course, he knew how powerful the demon clan was. The demon clan evolved from the Chi-Ujili tribe in ancient times. They had many masters. Even in his heyday, he did not dare to break into the demon clan's base camp. Therefore, he did not doubt 100 Change Star Lord's words. Intuition told him that what 100 Change Star Lord said was true. However, this time, the demon clan asked the demon god to recruit you to strengthen the demon clan's strength and prepare for the arrival of the demon clan's main force. It's a pity that the demon god has been delayed by other things. He gave you to me for free. 100 Change Star Lord added. Everyone finally realized that this was the reason why 100 Change Star Lord appeared here. The demon clan was so insidious that they had prepared such a powerful chess piece. Tang Zheng and the others looked at each other and became very serious. Everyone knew that Orochi's fate in the hands of 100 Change Star Lord was much worse than that of the demon god. 100 Change Star Lord had enough strength to help Orochi recover its strength. That meant that more people would die and the people would be plunged into misery and suffering. Orochi stared at 100 Change Star Lord with his big round eyes and said angrily, the demon clan has disappeared from this world. No one in this world can make me surrender. You can't. Chapter 696. 100 Faces Star Lord watched as Yamada no Orochi rushed over, but he did not move. There was even a faint smile at the corner of his eyes. Seeing that Yamada no Orochi was right in front of 100 Change Star Lord, he finally moved. He gently raised his lotus-like arm. Splash! The lake water boiled and soared into the air, transforming into a giant chain that coiled around the Yamada no Orochi's gigantic body, instantly locking it in place. Roar! Yamada no Orochi looked up to the sky and roared. It rolled in the air, trying to break free from the chain. Water splashed everywhere, and the chain made cracking sounds as if it would break at any time. The 100 Change Star Sovereign smirked and said, do you want to break free? Then tighten it a little more. As soon as he finished speaking, the chain quickly contracted. Yamada no Orochi's roar became louder and louder, and it rolled more and more violently. Boom! Its huge tail swept across, and the cave collapsed completely. Thousands of huge rocks fell from above like raindrops. Let's get out of here quickly. Tang Zheng took the weapon from Li Xiaotian, carried it, stepped on the falling rocks, and rushed up. Yamada no Orochi could not even protect itself, so it did not have the time to care about them. Therefore, one by one, they rushed out of the cave like arrows. Boom! With a loud bang, the cave was buried by huge rocks. Part of Yamada no Orochi's body was buried under the rocks, and it was still twisting its body and struggling. Rocks were flying everywhere, and the scene was extremely chaotic. Tang Zheng and the others landed safely in the lake. They stepped on the lake water and quickly ran to the shore. 100 Change Star Lord's gaze turned, and he caught a glimpse of this group of people who suddenly appeared. They were hiding in the cave just now, and he had overlooked them. Who are these people? A question mark appeared in 100 Change Star Lord's mind, and he looked at them with interest. Suddenly, 100 Change Star Lord's pupils shrank, and he fixed his eyes on a familiar figure. He could not help but exclaim, it's him. This figure was too familiar. It did not occupy much of a place in his memory of tens of thousands of years. However, the key was that this memory was not very old, so he managed to find it in time. Tang Zheng. He subconsciously called out softly. This name had left a deep impression on him. Back then, when the 100 Transformation Star Lord was trapped in the Buzhou Mountain, the 100 Transformation Star Lord first used the drawing ground prison technique to trap the Heaven Monk. Then, Tang Zheng and the group of uninvited guests barged in and immediately fell into the drawing ground prison. The 100 Transformation Star Lord originally wanted to turn these uninvited guests into dolls to accompany him through the long years. However, things did not go according to plan. While Tang Zheng was unable to move, he actually called upon the 4 Symbols Venerables to break his painted ground prison, freeing everyone. After that, he went through a series of fierce battles. In the end, Tang Zheng and the others quietly escaped, which was a great humiliation to him. Moreover, he had seen Tang Zheng some time ago when he attached his divine sense to the demon god. Therefore, with the new and old hatred added together, how could he forget about Tang Zheng? Looking at Tang Zheng from afar, the calm expression on the 100 Transformation Starlord's face had disappeared, replaced by a murderous aura. Tang Zheng, stop right there. The 100 Transformation Starlord shouted from above and pointed at Tang Zheng. A pillar of water rose from the lake and turned into a huge claw, grabbing at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng hugged Marshall and turned his head slightly. When he saw the huge claw, he was shocked and prepared to defend. However, one person beat him to it. Wu Junshan stood in front of Tang Zheng to protect him. His hands formed a circle and blocked the huge claw. You're courting death. The 100 Transformation Starlord scolded disdainfully. His small hands immediately clenched into fists. The claw instantly contracted and grabbed Wu Junshan. Wu Junshan's figure disappeared, and the others turned pale with fright and screamed, "Sect Master! Let's see if you still dare to go against me." The 100 Transformation Starlord was extremely proud and turned his gaze to Tang Zheng. Suddenly, boom! With an explosion, the claw exploded and turned into water droplets that filled the sky. Wu Junshan stood proudly and stared at the 100 Transformation Starlord coldly, saying, "You want to kill me just like that? You think too little of me." The 100 Transformation Starlord was slightly stunned, but immediately became angry and prepared to attack again. At this time, Yamada no Orochi, who had been trapped by the chains, used all his skills. His body that was buried under the ground also rushed out. His huge body was completely compared to the others, like a giant compared to a small dot. With a flash of black light, his huge tail whipped the chains without hesitation. Kacha! The chains exploded one after another, turning into water droplets and falling back into the lake. The 100 Transformation Starlord's expression changed slightly. His attention was attracted by Tang Zheng and the others, and Yamada no Orochi took the opportunity to escape. "Do you want to escape just like that?" How can I let a cooked duck escape?" The 100 Transformation Starlord said disdainfully. His upper body slightly leaned forward and swooped down with a whistling sound. The surface of the lake rippled, and the powerful shockwave almost set off waves. "Yamada no Orochi, since you are still stubborn and unwilling to obediently surrender, then I will beat you until you surrender." The 100 Transformation Starlord said in a deep voice. Her rosy cheeks became gloomy. Yamada no Orochi raised his head and shook his head. Zhang Yu was helpless and roared, "Dream on." With a swing of his huge tail, a 100-meter-tall wave rushed down at the 100 Transformation Starlord. The 100 Transformation Starlord was calm and immediately launched a counterattack. The battle was extremely fierce, and the bottom of the lake was still letting out loud noises and collapsing. Even the ground quickly caved in. The lake water seeped out from the ground and spread all the way to the distance. No one knew where it led to. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Tang Zheng and the others had already escaped to the shore. Turning their heads to look, they saw this apocalyptic scene, and all of them were greatly shocked. A battle of this level truly had the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. It was hard to imagine what kind of scene it was when the cultivators of this world ran amok. Back then, there were cultivators who were even more powerful than the 100 Transformations Star-Lord. They even had the legendary divine might to split the heavens and earth apart. It was hard to imagine what kind of scene that was. Lan Yu saw Marshall in Tang Zheng's embrace and asked with concern, what happened to Marshall? She was poisoned by the Imperial Advisor's goo. Her life or death is unknown. Tang Zheng looked at Marshall, whose eyes were tightly shut, and said worriedly. Lan Yu's expression changed slightly. She had only heard of the goo poison, but she had never heard of it before. Lan Yu had deep feelings for Marshall, and they were like mother and daughter. Lan Yu said anxiously, then what method is there to save him? The antidote is in the hands of the Imperial Advisor. Where is the Imperial Advisor? Looking around, there was no trace of the Imperial Advisor. Just now, we were only concerned about escaping and didn't pay attention to the Imperial Advisor. Could it be that he was buried at the bottom of the cave? Tang Zheng said suspiciously. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. There was no way to verify the answer. If they couldn't find the Imperial Advisor, then there was no antidote for the goo. Tang Zheng's expression immediately became even uglier. He looked at Marshall anxiously and said, let's leave this place first and then think of a way to save her. Everyone nodded in agreement. Wu Junshan looked deeply at Li Xiaotian, who was beside him. Li Palace and Li Xiaotian had a huge grudge. If they killed Li Xiaotian now, she would definitely have no way to resist. Li Xiaotian's expression tightened as she looked worriedly at Wu Junshan. She was also aware of the danger she was in. Her heart started to beat uncontrollably and even her breathing became hurried. Wu Junshan snorted. He had already determined from Li Xiaotian's action of hugging Marshall that she was in an alliance with his side. Thus, he said, don't worry, I won't kill you. But it's only limited to this time. If I meet you again, I won't be merciful. Not only did Grandma Li cause the Marshall sect to fall apart, she even revealed our whereabouts to the Imperial Advisor's residence. I will remember this debt and personally settle it with her in the future. Li Xiaotian's body relaxed. She knew she had temporarily passed this hurdle. Tang Zheng looked deeply at her and added, Li Xiaotian, you still haven't told me the truth. You coming to the island nation to treat the emperor was just a pretense. Your true goal was to investigate the strength of the Imperial Advisor's residence. Humph, I will also remember this debt. In the future, I will definitely not believe your words. His tone was firm and resolute. Li Xiaotian's body trembled. She wanted to say something but hesitated. But in the end, she gave up helplessly and faintly sighed. Her lie was finally exposed. The relationship between the two sides that seemed to have improved immediately fell to the freezing point. Li Xiaotian was very dejected, but there was nothing she could do. Let's go. Lan Yu urged. The dozens of people quickly fled the lake. The 100 Change Star Sovereign had been watching them. When she saw that they were about to escape, she immediately turned her spearhead towards them. All of you, stop right there. Don't even think about escaping. The 100 Change Star Sovereign angrily roared. Her small hand grabbed at the air and the lake water immediately condensed into a long spear. She quickly attacked everyone. Wu Junshan stopped and turned to face the long spear. Without turning his head, he shouted, you guys go quickly. I will cover the rear. Tang Zheng's expression was slightly strange. The others all stopped and shouted, we will lend you a hand, Sect Master. Stop right there. Do you want to disobey my order? Wu Junshan roared, Lan Yu, take them away. Lan Yu looked deeply at her husband and gritted her teeth, let's go. She took the lead and fled the lake. The others had no choice but to flee. They could only hear the rumbling sounds of fighting behind them. The sky shook as if the end of the world had arrived. Everyone had already fled far away, but the rumbling sounds of fighting were still ear-piercing. It was as if they were right next to their ears. There are dead people. Suddenly, someone shouted. There were dead bodies lying in the grass beside the road. Tang Zhen glanced and immediately determined, these people are from the Imperial Advisor's residence. When they were chasing the Imperial Advisor earlier, they did not see this corpse. This meant that they had just died. There are more in front. Someone exclaimed. There are more here. There are more over there. Chapter 697. In this Imperial Preceptor's residence, there was only one person who could cause this kind of lethality, the 100 Faces Star Lord. Tang Zheng looked around and didn't find Junko's figure among the corpses. He didn't know whether she escaped or was killed. In a flash, everyone finally came to the edge of the Imperial Preceptor's residence. Tang Zheng and Li Xiaotian looked at each other and were overjoyed, exclaiming, the thick fog is gone. There was no fog in front of them, and the winding path extended forward under their feet. It must be the 100 Faces Star Lord who broke the protective formation of the Imperial Preceptor's residence. Tang Zheng guessed. Li Xiaotian nodded, this was the only explanation. If they rushed out, then everyone could escape. Tang Zheng stopped and looked back. The faint sound of fighting could be heard, but he didn't know what the situation was. Should we wait for him? Tang Zheng asked. Lan Yu looked back deeply and said resolutely, no, he will definitely find a way to escape and then come find us. As a couple for decades, Lan Yu still had strong confidence in Wu Junshan. Well, then we will go first. Tang Zheng didn't hesitate and waved his hand, and everyone left the Imperial Preceptor's residence along the winding path. When he saw the bustling streets again, Tang Zheng felt as if he was in a different world, and the others also felt their bodies relax. Speaking of which, this time they really had to thank the 100 Faces Star Lord. If he hadn't come to disturb them, they would have to go through a bloody battle to escape from Yamada no Orochi, and perhaps more people would be sacrificed. Now, it was the best result. I will go first. Li Xiaotian looked at Tang Zheng and said goodbye with a complicated expression. Tang Zheng looked at her deeply and said, next time, don't let me see you again. Li Xiaotian revealed a bitter smile. I'm afraid that will be very difficult to achieve. In the end, the Li Palace and Tang Zheng were already standing on opposite sides of each other. Given the style of the Li Palace, Li Xiaotian was well aware that it was absolutely impossible for the two sides to meet. Perhaps the next time they met, the situation would be even grimmer. Victory and defeat would be decided, perhaps even, life and death. This was no longer something she could control. Tang Zheng also understood this point and said in a deep voice, then you should take care of yourself. When the time comes, life and death will depend on your own ability. Li Xiaotian was speechless. He turned around and disappeared into the sea of people. Looking at the direction she disappeared in, Tang Zheng could not help but feel a little complicated. Both of them had gone through so much to reach this point in the end. It was really fate that made fools of people. Let's go as well, Tang Zheng said, calming himself down. This group of people was like a clay ox entering the sea in the crowd. They did not cause much of a ripple as they quickly distanced themselves from the Imperial Advisor's mansion. As night fell, everyone arrived at a remote residence. After confirming that no one else had discovered their whereabouts, they knocked out the owner and moved in. It was already inconvenient for so many people to stay in a hotel, but they couldn't travel long distances because the most important thing right now was to save Wu. Wu was already on the verge of death. The goo worm had completely wrapped around her heart, and it could stop beating at any time. Lan Yu stroked the hair on Wu's forehead and said emotionally, this child, Wu, has had a tough life since he was young. I never thought that he would have to suffer like this today. Tang Zheng could not hide the pain in his eyes. In his mind, he could not help but recall bits and pieces of her. It was like a movie, flashing back and forth. Whoosh! He took a deep breath and said firmly, I promised to save her. I must find a way to get along with her. Right, we definitely can't just watch her lose her life like that. Lan Yu nodded in agreement, but immediately frowned, I don't know the way of the apricot forest, so I'm helpless. Tang Zheng, do you have a way? Tang Zheng calmed down and started to think. His medical skills were only half-baked, so he was afraid that he would not be able to deal with this goo worm. The goo technique was a type of magic, and in the end, saving her would still depend on magic. What kind of magic could he use? For a moment, he was in a terrible fix and had no clue. I have to give it a try no matter what. Since the goo worm has such a huge reaction to the innate qi, it might be because it's afraid of my innate qi. Tang Zheng's heart moved, and he decided to take the risk. A strand of innate qi followed his meridians and arrived at Wu's heart. Immediately, the goo worm's reaction became intense. Its ugly body quickly shrank inward, trying to avoid Tang Zheng, as if it wanted to drill into Wu's heart. Damned goo worm, come out. Tang Zheng's expression changed slightly. His genuine qi surged and wrapped around one of the tentacles, trying to pull the goo out. However, the head of the goo worm had already drilled into his heart, leaving Tang Zheng helpless. Ah! Marshall suddenly let out a mournful scream, his body convulsing. Lan Yu's expression changed greatly as she shouted, Wu! Marshall's eyes were tightly shut, unable to reply. She was already on the verge of death, her consciousness weak. Tang Zheng, how is it? Lan Yu asked anxiously. Tang Zheng's forehead was already covered in sweat. He said, it's not easy. I'll do my best. You must save her. Tang Zheng nodded and mobilized even more true qi to wrap around the entire heart. He tried to drill into the heart and destroy the goo worm. Suddenly, Marshall's body stopped twitching, and even his breathing became very weak. His heart almost stopped beating. Shit! This goo worm is up to something. The goo worm had obviously sped up the speed at which it killed its host. Helpless, Tang Zheng could only withdraw his genuine qi from her heart. Her heartbeat sped up a bit, and her breathing became a bit stronger. Tang Zheng was like dead ash, he was extremely dejected, this method still did not work. Looking at Marshall, who was like a sleeping beauty, and clearly feeling the life force gradually fading from her body, Tang Zheng felt as if a knife was being twisted. Lan Yu sighed inwardly. She understood the feeling of being unable to reverse the situation. Back then, when Tang Zheng died, she had almost collapsed and had nothing left to live for. At this moment, Tang Zheng's mood was not much different. Lan Yu patted his shoulder and comforted him, if Marshall knew about your feelings for her, even if there was nothing she could do, she would still be very gratified. Although the two of you usually don't get along, I can tell that she likes you. Tang Zheng did not say a word, but his heart ached even more. It's a pity that the heavens are not on your side. Otherwise, the two of you would really be a match made in heaven. Perhaps, the heavens are truly jealous of you, which is why they forcefully separated you two. I promised her that I would save her. Tang Zheng said in a daze. Lan Yu's eyes were moist as she choked with sobs and said, sometimes, a person's strength is really weak. It can't solve all problems. Tang Zheng obviously understood this point, but he really didn't want Marshall to die like this. At this last moment, he finally understood his own heart. The two of them had experienced so much together, and although it was not a pleasant period of time, Marshall had unknowingly walked into his heart and occupied a very important position. His teeth bit deeply into his lips, and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth, but he was completely unaware. His eyes involuntarily turned red, and he couldn't help but lean over and gently kiss her lips. He had never kissed her so gently before. Although the two of them had already kissed each other a few times, that was when Tang Zheng's pure yang force was activated. His consciousness had already sunk into chaos, and it was more of an instinct than a feeling that came from the bottom of his heart. This kiss did not contain any desire, but it was filled with deep emotions, emotions that came from the bottom of his heart. The blood on Tang Zheng's lips dyed Marshall's lips red, and the blood seeped in through his teeth. As their lips parted, Tang Zheng carried her by the waist and said, I'll take her to admire the moonlight. I've never truly accompanied her before. Woo! A cry finally broke out of Lan Yu's throat. She hurriedly covered her mouth, but it was still difficult to hide her sobbing. Tears had already flowed out of her eyes as she stared at Tang Zheng's tall figure and Marshall who was in his embrace. Marshall's figure was tall, and being held in Tang Zheng's embrace, he did not feel like a little bird, but rather like a sleeping mermaid. Lan Yu nodded incessantly and said, "You guys can go. Accompany her properly." Lan Yu knew that Marshall's life had already come to an end, and there was no other way. Tang Zheng had already accepted this reality, so he planned to accompany her on the final journey of her life. Tang Zheng's eyes were moist, his legs felt as if they were filled with lead, as heavy as 1,000 caddies. He walked towards the balcony step by step, as if he had used up all of his strength, and every step was incomparably heavy. He sat on the balcony with Marshall in his arms. The snow-white moonlight shone down from the sky, covering everything on the ground in a layer of silver. Bathed in the moonlight, Marshall's face was suffused with a holy radiance. Her exquisite facial features caused one's heart to palpitate. But at this moment, her face was haggard. She no longer had her usual valiant appearance, causing one's heart to ache so much that it was about to break. Tang Zheng gently caressed her cheek and muttered to himself, softly recalling the bits and pieces of the two of them. The scenes in his mind turned into words and came out of his mouth. Although it was simple, it was like the most moving words of love in the world, causing people to be moved. Lan Yu looked at the two of them from afar, and vaguely heard Tang Zheng's voice. She started to sob again, her tears wetting her cheeks, and she couldn't help but fall into self-blame. She already knew that a large part of the reason why she was able to be saved this time was because of Marshall. If she hadn't discovered some clues and given Tang Zheng a lot of benefits, Tang Zheng wouldn't have come to the island nation. Then these people would only have a dead end. Therefore, everyone's lives were saved by Wu Yu. However, she could save others, but she could not save herself. All of this was caused by that damned imperial advisor. If he had not given Wu that pill, then everything would have been fine. Tang Zheng looked at her face in a daze. He regretted and blamed himself. Why did he treat her so coldly in the past? He did not say a single word of gentleness to her. He even impatiently protected her at all times. Now, even if he wanted to do everything he could to get back all of this, it was impossible. One would only know how precious it was after losing it. He finally knew how precious she was, but he was going to lose her forever. Fate really played tricks on people. Ah! Chapter 698. His tears had not dried, but the grief in Tang Zheng's heart had already gradually turned into anger, as if it was about to burst out of his chest and spurt out. Imperial Advisor, Heavenly Emperor, I want you to be buried with Marshall. Tang Zheng was hysterical as he gnashed his teeth and roared. Marshall, wait for me. I'll take revenge for you. Wait for me to come back. Tang Zheng turned his head and looked at Lan Yu. Lan Yu understood and immediately walked over. What are you going to do? The Imperial Advisor's whereabouts are unknown, so I'll go find the Heavenly Emperor. The fake Heavenly Emperor is dead, so the real Heavenly Emperor will also die and be buried with Marshall. Tang Zheng was filled with killing intent, as if he was a god of death. If God blocked him, he would kill God. If Buddha blocked him, he would destroy Buddha. Lan Yu wanted to say something but hesitated. After hesitating for a moment, he said, I'll go with you. I'll go alone. Take good care of Marshall. Tang Zheng said without any room for refutation. Lan Yu stared deeply into his eyes, understanding his thoughts and emotions, and said, All right, you go, we'll wait for you. Tang Zheng leaped up and jumped down from the balcony on the second floor. A white light also jumped out from the building and jumped onto his shoulder, squeaking. Tang Zheng patted Xiao Bai's shoulder, understanding its thoughts, and said, Xiao Bai, today we will start a massacre, completely destroy the Imperial Palace, kill that damned Heavenly Emperor. Xiao Bai nodded his head heavily, his eyes flickering with flames. Whiz! Tang Zheng turned into a bolt of lightning and disappeared without a trace. The security of the imperial palace was extremely tight. Ever since Tang Zheng had caused a ruckus in the imperial residence, this area had entered a state of high alert, combining the light and the dark to cast an inescapable net. After such a long time, there were no longer any abnormalities, so many of the guards' vigilance had weakened by a lot. In addition, the Heavenly Emperor had reappeared, and everything was on the right track. That gave people a huge reassurance. The repair work of the Kokyo was already underway. The Kokyo was one of the spiritual symbols of the island nation. Of course, it couldn't be in such a dilapidated state. The royal family was already very familiar with controlling the feelings of the people. The ordeal this time would not be a blow to them. If they handled it properly, it could even be used as an opportunity to stimulate the people again, gather them together, and work hard to make another leap in the country's strength. Just like after the war, the aftermath of the island nation did not cause the island nation to be unable to recover from the setback. Instead, the people were filled with absolute enthusiasm, causing the country to undergo earth-shaking changes in a short period of time. The national strength soared like a rocket. In the emperor's bedroom, a group of ministers sat around. These were the core figures of the island nation's power. The Sky Emperor sat on the chair, coincidentally the chair that Tang Zheng felt was extremely strange. If Tang Zheng saw it again, he would definitely recognize it. This chair was a miniature version of the Yamada no Orochi. The 8 lifelike heads were no different from the Yamada no Orochi. The island nation's royal family had unknowingly exposed their relationship with the Yamada no Orochi. However, the world no longer knew about the Yamada no Orochi, so they did not discover this secret. The emperor of the island nation knew that his biggest reliance was the Yamada no Orochi. Therefore, he made this chair based on the Yamada no Orochi. It was a symbol of the royal family's power, just like the dragon throne of Huaxia. The emperor looked dispirited, and there was a sickly look between his eyebrows. He was indeed very different from the substitute. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that he was seriously ill. It was indeed inappropriate for him to show his face in public. It was no wonder that he found a substitute. What happened at the imperial advisor's residence? Why is there no news from the people you sent? The emperor coughed violently and asked with an unhappy expression. Your Majesty, the Grand Preceptor's mansion's array formation has been destroyed, and there is a very fierce battle inside. As for the specific situation, our people have not yet sent back any news, so we have to wait a little longer. A minister bowed slightly and said respectfully. Wait. You only know how to make me wait. Do you think I have to wait until everything is settled? The emperor slapped the armrest of the chair and said angrily. The others did not know that the most important thing in the imperial advisor's residence was the Yamada no Orochi and not the imperial advisor. They only thought that the emperor was concerned about the imperial advisor's safety. Therefore, they comforted him, Your Majesty, please rest assured. The imperial advisor is a master of a generation. His cultivation is unfathomable. Even if there is an enemy, it will be difficult for them to hurt him. They will definitely be defeated by him. What do you know? What nonsense! The emperor said unhappily, Send more people into the imperial advisor's residence. However, you must give them a death order. No matter what they see, they are not allowed to leak a single word to the outside world. Otherwise, they will be killed without mercy. The emperor gave the death order. If the Yamada no Orochi was exposed to the news, it would definitely cause a huge uproar. The emperor did not want this kind of exposure. Although the ministers did not understand the deeper meaning, they still respectfully accepted the order. Suddenly, there was a commotion outside. Everyone's nerves immediately tensed up. The emperor held the armrest of the chair with both hands and leaned forward slightly. His butt even left the chair. He looked like he would run away at any time if the situation was not right. It was comical and laughable. The emperor was already like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. He had been the emperor for most of his life. Now that he was old, He had to be so frightened. He was very afraid of death. Otherwise, he would not have hurriedly invited Li Xiaotian over after hearing that the Li Palace could cure his illness. As long as there was a chance of survival, he was not willing to let it go. The more he lived in this world, the more he would enjoy the privileges and pleasure of being the emperor. If his illness could really be cured, then his good days would be very long. However, he was also a very cautious person. Otherwise, when he was about to let Tang Zheng examine his body, he would still use a substitute. He clearly wanted to use a substitute to test the Li Palace's true strength. If it was a lie and deliberately mystifying, then he, the real one, would not show his face in public again. However, he did not expect so many things to happen. The substitute was actually kidnapped and even lost his life. He often felt a lingering fear. If the person sitting on the chair that day had been him, what would have happened? He was afraid that his fate would not have been much different from the substitutes, perhaps even worse. After all, he was the real emperor, a trump card. In Tang Zheng's hands, he could play a decisive role, something that the substitute could not compare to. But even so, the emperor still did not feel relaxed. Besides the pain, he was also worried that those people would come back in a swirl of dust. The emperor's nerves immediately tensed up when he heard the commotion outside. The bodyguards behind him immediately surrounded him to guard against possible attacks. "Your Majesty, let's leave this place first," someone advised. "This is my bedroom, where else can I go? Where else can I go? Quickly send someone to investigate what happened." "It's so dark, don't let it be a false alarm," the emperor said firmly. In truth, his heart was beating like a drum. The imperial palace did not allow loud noises. With such a large commotion, something must have happened. Suddenly, a person staggered in and shouted, "Your Majesty, there's an assassin." Assassin! Everyone was shocked. Their heartstrings were completely taut. The bodyguards immediately surrounded the emperor and advised, "Your Majesty, let's hide for now." The emperor's expression kept changing. Finally, he compromised, "All right, let's go." The two bodyguards on his left and right supported him as they walked towards the back of the palace. Bang! With a loud sound, the palace door was smashed into pieces by a few people. Those people fell to the ground weakly and died on the spot. "Who are you?" someone asked in island nation language. Tang Zheng coldly snorted and said, "I can't hear your bird language. You have harmed the martial arts. I want all of you to be buried with me." If Suing Tian saw this scene, he would probably be scared out of his wits. He was very different from Tang Zheng. Because of his official status, he would weigh the pros and cons before doing anything. He could not be like Tang Zheng, who did as he pleased. Tang Zheng's actions this time would really provoke a war between the two countries, and even trigger the Third World War. But Tang Zheng's heart was filled with anger, he did not care about these things. Seeing a group of island nation people, the war soul in his hand did not hesitate to kill. Puff! The enemy at the front was immediately cut in half. Immediately, blood splattered everywhere and dyed the palace red. Ah! Screams rose and fell. Those powerless ministers were so scared that they were about to become idiots. Some even lost control of their bowels and were in a sorry state. The emperor didn't have time to go far. He turned his head to look and was immediately scared to death. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. He muttered to himself, "It's him. This demon is here again. Hurry up and stop him. Stop him." The heavenly emperor had already recognized Tang Zheng, and was both shocked and overwhelmed with shock. He had always sent out elite troops to search for this person's whereabouts, but in the end, it was as if the other party had disappeared from the face of the earth. Why did he rush into the imperial palace like a madman today? Did he really think that this was a public toilet? Did he really think that he could come and go as he pleased? The emperor felt bitter in his heart. In the history of the emperor, he had never been as sullen as he was. In just a short span of 10 days, he had been killed twice in his headquarters. As the ruler of a country, even the dignity of this country had been completely swept away. Protect the emperor! Protect the emperor! Someone shouted loudly as he pulled the emperor and quickly retreated. Tang Zheng saw the emperor from afar. He would never forget that familiar figure for the rest of his life. Thus, he roared, "Emperor, I'm going to kill you." When the emperor heard this, he staggered and fell to the ground. His originally weak body was actually unable to get up. When the guard saw this, he immediately picked him up and carried him on his shoulder. Then, he ran away without stopping. Tang Zheng wanted to kill the emperor, but the palace was already surrounded by guards. Over 100 guards completely blocked the way out. Kill! The guards' eyes turned red as they roared. Tang Zheng could not hear the island nation's language, but he could feel the monstrous killing intent. Chapter 699. Kill without mercy. The 3 words were powerful and resonant, containing the power of a thunderbolt, pouncing forward like a tiger or wolf. The bodyguards used all of their skills to fight with Tang Zheng. The battle was fierce, and cold weapons and firearms were used one after another. Tang Zheng was bold, he shuttled back and forth like flowing water. The War Soul Sword emitted a deathly aura, and every strike would reap a few lives. The light of the War Soul Sword became more and more resplendent, and the mottled black spots became fewer and fewer. "It's on fire!" Suddenly, a clamor came from outside the door, and flames soared into the sky. These wooden palaces were the best fuel, and as soon as the flames appeared, the fire quickly spread, and the few palaces immediately turned into a sea of fire. A white figure rushed out from the sea of fire and directly ran into the main hall. He glanced at Tang Zheng from afar, then stepped on the enemy's head and flew towards Tang Zheng. "What the hell is this?" Cries of alarm sounded from all directions, and immediately, someone wanted to kill Xiao Bai. Little White Rabbit leaped into the air and dodged a bullet. When it was still in the air, it opened its mouth and spat out a ball of flame, turning the person who fired the gun into a man on fire. He screamed in pain. Tang Zheng glanced at the sea of flames outside the door and praised, "Xiao Bai, good job. Today, I will completely burn the imperial palace and burn it to ashes." Xiao Bai replied with a squeak, his little eyes rolling in excitement. In the distance, when the emperor saw the sea of flames, he almost fainted from anger. His entire body trembled as he muttered to himself, "The imperial palace has been destroyed by my hands, the imperial palace has been destroyed by my hands." As if he was possessed, he was like a walking corpse that was caught by the guards and quickly escaped from Tang Zheng's line of sight. "Xiao Bai, chase after him first and stop the emperor." Tang Zheng pointed in the direction of the emperor and said. Xiao Bai squeaked, turned into a white shadow, and swept past everyone's heads, chasing in the direction of the emperor. There were more and more enemies in front of him, and many more came in from outside the door. The War Soul Sword in Tang Zheng's hand became more and more dazzling. Whoosh! Whoosh! The sword light spread out in all directions, and people kept falling under the War Soul Sword. However, the other party kept charging forward, not knowing whether they were dead or alive. The people of the island nation had also gone crazy. They no longer cared about life and death. They were determined to stop Tang Zheng, or even, kill him. "Sigh, we can't go on like this. Shooting sun arrows, I'm counting on you." The shooting sun arrows were more powerful than the War Soul Sword, and were more suitable for opening up roads. Thus, with a flash of light, the War Soul Sword disappeared, and was replaced by the heaven-shocking bow and shooting sun arrows. The bowstring trembled, and the shooting sun arrow left the bowstring. The powerful shockwave caused the enemies in front of him to be blown away like straw in the wind. Many of them had their chests pierced through and died on the spot. The remaining power of the shooting sun arrows had not dissipated, and had actually pierced through the Sky Emperor's chair. The dragon throne, that was imitating the Yamata no Orochi, immediately disintegrated, turning into dust. Taking advantage of the path that was swept out, Tang Zheng jumped up and followed the trajectory of the shooting sun arrows, quickly escaping from the palace. The others wanted to chase, but their speed could not be compared to Tang Zheng's. Kill! Tang Zheng's beard and hair flew wildly, like a god of death. Wherever he went, the enemies would all fall to the ground. However, there were not as many enemies as there were in the main hall, so they were unable to restrain his footsteps. After a while, he rushed out of the back door of the palace. In front of him was a long passageway with carved beams and painted rafters. The flowers on both sides were blooming, and the scenery was pleasant. However, at this moment, the scenery was stained with blood, turning into an azure field. Tang Zheng's heart was as stiff as iron, without the slightest bit of mercy or leniency. He was not such a bloodthirsty person, but the situation of martial had deeply stimulated him. Adding on the hatred he had for the island nation since he was young, he did not have the slightest bit of mercy. In front of him, there was a blaze, and Tang Zheng shivered. He understood that he had caught up to the target, so he increased his speed and soon arrived at the scene. The few people on the ground had already been burned to charcoal, and Xiao Bai was fiercely attacking a person. This person was also dressed as a guard, but his strength was completely different, completely crushing the other guards. Great Master Martial Artist. Tang Zheng's pupils constricted, and with a glance, he could see through the details of this person. This person was tall and strong, and was much taller and more powerful than the average island nation person. His muscles were strong and powerful, and his veins were bulging high, like small pythons winding around his body, bulging his clothes. This person is even more powerful than the great master martial artist beside the substitute, although he is relatively young. Tang Zheng muttered to himself, but his feet seemed to have gathered wind, and he arrived at the scene. The Sky Emperor fell to the ground, panting like a cow, sweating profusely, and looking at the two sides of the battle with a pale face. When he saw Tang Zheng rushing over, a look of despair immediately appeared in his eyes. He had misjudged the situation, and the enemy was even more daring than he had imagined. He actually dared to cause trouble in the Kokyo again. This time, he was not as lucky as last time. Without a substitute, the Sky Emperor was going to fight in person. The key was that Tang Zheng's killing intent was too strong, and he did not hide it at all. The Sky Emperor was not a fool. How could he not understand that Tang Zheng was really coming for him? If he did not kill him, he would definitely not give up. Of course, if he had the chance, he would not hesitate to kill Tang Zheng. In the battle with the Yamada no Orochi, Xiao Bai had exhausted too much of his energy, and now his strength was greatly reduced. Moreover, the enemy was a great master martial artist, so Xiao Bai did not have the upper hand, and could only temporarily delay the opponent's escape. Xiao Bai, let me do it. Tang Zheng shouted, and he had already made the first move. The opponent had already known Tang Zheng's information. Seeing that he was going to fight personally, the great master martial artist also attacked without saying a word. This person's fist was powerful and heavy. Tang Zheng collided with it a few times, and he felt that the bones in his fingers were cracking, as if they were about to break. However, Tang Zheng did not cower. Instead, it was as if he had been provoked, and he fought with all his might, as if he was determined to determine the victor. Bang! Another punch. Both of their fists were bleeding, but the two of them were completely unaware of it. They clashed head-on, displaying the spirit of a man to the fullest. The blood vessels on the great master's arms seemed to come to life as they continuously swam around his body like a winding python. Pa pa pa. A series of crisp sounds came from the great master's body. His muscles twitched non-stop, rapidly expanding outwards. His clothes were torn apart, revealing large chunks of bronze-colored muscles. His body grew taller at a speed visible to the naked eye. In an instant, he looked like a human-shaped giant bear, taller than Tang Zheng by a large margin. Tang Zheng had seen werewolves transform before, and it was even more exaggerated and terrifying than this person, so he was not afraid. Instead, he observed the slightest change with interest. After transforming into a monk, the other party's aura became even stronger. He was like a tiger with a tiger's might. With a glare, he spoke a lot of words in a fiendish manner. Tang Zheng could not understand, but he could guess that it was nothing more than ruthless words. Tang Zheng laughed coldly and revealed the War Soul sword in his hand. There must be many enemies rushing over from all directions, wanting to save the Sky Emperor. Therefore, he could not waste too much time and had to end the battle quickly. Kill! Tang Zheng roared, his body moved, but his sword had already flown out. Heaven Flying Immortal, combined with the Imperial Sword technique, this move was exceptionally cool. Roar! Grandmaster roared towards the sky, his entire body glowing with a faint luster. He also brandished his fist to welcome the War Soul sword. This person actually trains in martial arts, his body's resistance to attacks is incomparably strong, but, I'm afraid it's not as profound as the Chaotic Vajra spell. Let's see if he can withstand the attack of the War Soul sword. Tang Zheng said. The Grandmaster obviously did not place the War Soul sword in his eyes. Relying on his usual experience, he actually used his palms to block the War Soul sword. His palms were suffused with a metallic luster, as if they were plated with a layer of gold, giving off an invincible feeling. Puff! Blood splattered everywhere as the War Soul sword cut off the opponent's arm like cutting tofu. He immediately let out a muffled groan, but he actually managed to hold himself back from screaming. His veins were bulging, and he was filled with regret. He had misjudged the situation. However, this time, he was facing the War Soul sword, a heaven-grade magic treasure. Moreover, it had recently absorbed the sword chi in the sword forest and had undergone a tremendous change. It was far from what ordinary swords and blades could compare to. One wrong step would lead to many more mistakes. He staggered backwards, dodging War Soul's attack trajectory. The corners of Tang Zheng's mouth curled into a cold smile as he said, "You want to escape just like that? Let me show you the essence of the Heavenly Flying Immortal sword art." With a slight tap of his finger in the air, the trajectory of the War Soul sword immediately changed. It suddenly turned in midair and flew towards the Great Sage. Ah! The Great Sage could not help but let out a cry of surprise, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets, but before he could do anything else, the War Soul sword turned into a dazzling ray of light and shot into his chest, immediately coming out from his back. With a heart-piercing chill, the War Soul sword brought along a stream of blood as it turned and flew back into Tang Zheng's hands. The Great Sage's eyes immediately lost their luster, turning into a pair of dead fish eyes. With a ping sound, his tall body fell to the ground with a loud bang, causing the ground to tremble violently. The Emperor could not help but tremble as his eyes stared straight at the corpse, his last pillar of support. Island Nation was only a small place, and the development of martial arts was not as long as Huaxia, so there were not many experts in the past few years, not to mention a national treasure like the Great Sage martial artist. Tang Zheng had come to the Imperial Palace twice and killed 2 Great Sage martial artists. The Emperor simply had no place to find an expert to protect him. Tang Zheng walked step by step in front of the Emperor. The Emperor hurriedly moved his butt and retreated in a panic, shouting, "Don't kill me, don't kill me, I'll give you whatever you want, money, riches, I promise you." With no other way out, he had to tempt them with benefits. The Emperor played this kind of trick, but this kind of trick was effective on many people, but to Tang Zheng, it was a different story. Tang Zheng's face was ashen, like a block of ice. His killing intent did not diminish as he said, "There are many things in this world that cannot be exchanged with money and riches." The Emperor was slightly startled, hesitated for a moment, and asked, "What is that?" Chapter 700. Life? The Emperor was stunned like he had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. Whose life do you want to save? I have the best medical resources in the world that can help you. Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. Since the Imperial tutor was the one who poisoned her, then did the Emperor have an antidote? Seeing Tang Zheng hesitate, the Emperor knew that he had found the right antidote. He continued, life is important. Even if you kill me, you won't be able to bring her back to life, right? Why don't you think of a way to save her? Tang Zheng's eyes turned cold. Do you know about the goo poison? What is the goo poison? The emperor blurted out. However, he realized something and immediately changed his words. Goo poison, right? Of course I know about it. I have the antidote. Tang Zheng shook his head. His eyes turned cold. You don't even know about the goo poison and you still want to lie to me. The emperor really did not know about the goo poison. However, he was not willing to give up on this chance. He impatiently said, although I don't know about the goo poison, I can send people to investigate. I will definitely find the antidote. Tang Zheng shook his head. Even if he found the imperial tutor and used the emperor's life to threaten him, the imperial tutor might not do anything. After all, the conflict between the two sides had escalated to an unprecedented level. It was a life and death situation. They wanted to see the other side die, so why would they save someone? Tang Zheng tossed these unrealistic thoughts to the back of his mind and looked at the emperor expressionlessly. The emperor realized that something was wrong. He used all his strength to lie in front of Tang Zheng and said, I am the ruler of a country. I can fulfill any of your wishes as long as you ask. It's too late. Back then when you invaded Huaxia, did you spare the lives of those who begged you? No. You created so many massacres and now you refuse to admit it. You even changed the history books. You are the most despicable people in the world. You still want to live in this world? Impossible. Tang Zheng's answer was resolute and decisive, cutting off all hope for the emperor to survive. He raised his head once more and looked at Tang Zheng with disdain. If you kill me, the island nation and Huaxia will fall into war. You will drag both countries into an irrecoverable situation. You will be the sinner of history. Tang Zheng laughed disapprovingly. Ha, you really think too highly of yourself. You also think too highly of the island nation. Let me tell you, Huaxia is not the same as before. It is no longer the weak country of a few decades ago. Huaxia is strong and has long stood tall in the world. On the contrary, it is your island nation that has always been living in arrogance and wants to start another war. I will wait and see. When the time comes, I will let your country have a taste of Huaxia. The emperor's expression kept changing. Shame, anger, unsightly, and anger intertwined. He stared viciously at Tang Zheng and shouted hysterically, there will be a day when the island nation's juniors will complete the unfinished business of the island nation's juniors. We will once again set foot on your land, burn, kill, and rob. We will make your Huaxia people be slaves for generations to come. The emperor had already fallen into madness and was shouting non-stop. There was no anger on Tang Zheng's face. He only felt that this person was too pitiful. He had lived in delusion for his entire life. Could such a thing happen? Absolutely impossible. When you go to hell, open your eyes wide and watch carefully. There will be a day when your island nation will suffer 100 times, 1,000 times the pain that was inflicted on Huaxia. Tang Zheng finished coldly. Shua. His hand rose and the sword fell. The emperor's head fell to the ground and rolled far away like a rubber ball. The screams of the island nation people were getting closer and closer. Tang Zheng nodded to Xiao Bai and said, Xiao Bai, burn this place. Xiao Bai nodded and jumped into the air. Flames spewed out from his small mouth and instantly covered all the palaces. The Kokyo was completely turned into a sea of fire. The reinforcements who rushed over were trapped in the sea of fire and fled madly. Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai left the Kokyo, leaving behind the raging fire behind them. That night, the island nation was not peaceful. The world was shaken. Even if the island nation wanted to cover it up, there was no way. This was because the news had already spread on the internet. There were pictures, videos, and everything else. Among them, there was even a blurred image of Tang Zheng's back. He stood in the middle of the raging fire with a sword in one hand and a small child standing on his shoulder. He was peerless and independent. The world was shocked. Many people began to search for the identity of this assassin. Was it someone from the island nation or someone else? Most people did not know. Of course, the news of the emperor's death spread like the plague. The Kokyo and the emperor were completely finished by this assassin. The island nation people immediately hated this assassin to the bone. As for the people of other countries, their feelings were much more complicated. Every country announced that they had nothing to do with this matter. Moreover, they righteously condemned such an irresponsible and vile action. Huaxia was no exception. It was one of the countries with the harshest words. However, that picture had already been placed on the conference table of Huaxia's higher-ups. As long as one was familiar with Tang Zheng, it was not difficult to recognize him from this picture. Especially Xiao Bai's figure, it was too obvious. A man, a sword, and an animal. This combination, in this world, was probably only Tang Zheng alone. When Suing Tian held this picture, he almost fell to the ground in fright. His hands trembled and he almost could not hold the picture steadily. His eyes stared straight at the back of that figure and said nervously, "This brat, why can't he stop at all? Is he really going to start a third world war?" Before he could contact Tang Zheng, he was informed to attend a meeting. When he entered the meeting room and saw the people attending, his heart could not help but beat faster. These people were all big shots that could only be seen on TV. They were a group of people with the highest authority in Huaxia. A word from each of them would affect the country's development strategy and the livelihood of thousands of families. Of course, Suing Tian knew these people. Due to his special position, he had interacted with these people before. However, seeing so many people sitting together, he suddenly had an ominous premonition. Something big must have happened. What big thing could happen in the middle of the night? Of course, it was the neighboring island nation. His eyes were very sharp and he immediately saw a picture on the conference table. Wasn't that a picture of Tang Zheng's back? The raging fire set off his tall and straight figure. He was awe-inspiring and had a natural power. He could even feel a murderous aura coming from the picture. Dong dong dong. Another series of footsteps sounded. Suing Tian saw a person at a glance and his heart could not help but skip a beat. He was actually paying attention to this matter. This person had a square face, thick eyebrows, big eyes, a strong back and a strong waist. He had a majestic aura and there was a strong sense of power between his brows. Suing Tian's gaze went past this person and immediately landed on another person. In that instant, the ominous premonition in his heart grew stronger. Xing Feng, why is he beside him? The Dragon Group and the National Security Bureau had always been competing with each other. After experiencing several heavy blows from Tang Zheng, the Dragon Group had calmed down a lot. Due to the dissatisfaction of some of the higher-ups, the Dragon Group had also restrained themselves and even kept a low profile. But now that Suing Tian saw the helmsman of the Dragon Group, Xing Feng, standing beside this person, the ominous feeling grew stronger. His gaze turned and immediately landed on the picture again. An idea came to his mind and cold sweat flowed down his head like a waterfall. This picture was submitted by the Dragon Group. The Dragon Group's intelligence system is really getting better and better. In the past, this kind of thing was done by the National Security Bureau. But this time, the Dragon Group had taken over the responsibility. The National Security Bureau would be in a passive situation and leave an impression of incompetence in the eyes of the higher-ups. In the future, the Dragon Group would definitely obtain more resources and develop faster. It would definitely not be a good thing for the National Security Bureau. Xing Feng also raised his head and looked over. When their eyes met, Xing Feng's eyes were filled with a smug smile. There was even a hint of ridicule. Suing Tian snorted inwardly and became alert. He was afraid that tonight would not be easy. When the others saw this person, they all stood up. This person stretched his hand out and gestured for everyone to take a seat. Everyone waited for him to take a seat before they took their seats. Xing Feng, explain the situation. This person said in a deep voice. Xing Feng's expression turned cold as he said, "Tonight, a shocking matter happened in our neighboring island nation. The emperor and the imperial palace were completely destroyed and turned into a pile of ashes. The mastermind behind all of this is the person in the picture." Everyone immediately looked at the picture before them. Someone narrowed his eyes and looked at it for a moment before he said, "It's just a back view. I can't tell who it is." Xing Feng seemed to have expected such an answer as he mysteriously smiled. Those who aren't familiar with him naturally won't be able to tell. But those who are familiar with him will be able to recognize him with a single glance. Everyone's interest was piqued as they asked in surprise, "You're saying that you can already confirm the identity of this person?" Xing Feng purposely kept them in suspense as he turned to look at Su Yingtian and said, "Chief Su, you should be the one to answer this question, right?" Su Yingtian was unhappy in his heart. He wished that he could shoot Xing Feng. Xing Feng was purposely digging a hole for him to jump in, but he had no choice but to jump in. If he did not speak the truth, the consequences would be even more severe. Thus, he seriously looked at the picture and said, "We have also collected this information and are about to report it to the higher-ups. As for this person, we have already determined his identity." "Oh, who is it?" Everyone was curious as to who this fierce person was. Could it be someone from a terrorist organization? Tang Zheng. Su Yingtian took a deep breath and spat out 2 words. This name seems a little familiar. It also seems to be the name of our Huaxia people. Someone muttered. The smile in Xing Feng's eyes deepened as he said, "Chief Su, since you have already determined the identity of the other party, then continue speaking." Su Yingtian knew that he could not avoid it, so he said truthfully, "This person is from Huaxia." Wow! Immediately, many people were stunned. Even though they had experienced countless big battles and major events, they were still shocked by this news. A person from Huaxia burned the royal family of an island nation to ashes. That was not enough, he even killed the emperor. Chapter 701. The group of big shots looked at each other with mixed feelings. They were shocked beyond words by this news. Someone exclaimed as if he had just woken up from a dream, "I finally remember that name, Tang Zheng. Isn't he the rising star?" Xing Feng looked at Su Yingtian meaningfully and added with a smile, "Not only that, he is also a special consultant of the National Security Bureau." This sentence immediately stirred up the nerves of the others, especially the few big shots, who immediately realized the awkwardness of Tang Zheng's clone. Tang Zheng had an official status, and he was also a consultant of the National Security Bureau. That would completely change the meaning of the matter. His personal actions would rise to official actions. This would cause friction between the two countries, and it would be seen as a very serious act of sabotage, or even an act of aggression. The big shots couldn't help but sit up straight, and their faces became unprecedentedly serious. They looked at Su Yingtian with unfriendly gazes. "Director Su, what is your explanation?" Su Yingtian felt bitter in his heart, and had to explain, "Tang Zheng is indeed a consultant of the National Security Bureau, but this action is his personal action." "Hee, is that so? This is your one-sided statement. Do you think the island nation will believe it?" Xing Feng asked with a fake smile. Everyone frowned at the same time, because the answer was self-evident. The island nation obviously wouldn't believe it. "Su Yingtian, you are messing around. Gathering this kind of person to join the National Security Bureau, and he is even a consultant. Is this a consultant who is here to cause trouble?" Someone couldn't help but slap the table and said angrily. "Su Yingtian has helped us a lot. The emperor's brother fell into our hands because of him. In addition, he has made many contributions, and his performance is very outstanding." Su Yingtian earnestly said good things for Tang Zheng. So what if we have some achievements? The mess we made this time is much more serious than those trivial achievements. How do you think we should deal with the island nation if they hold us accountable?" Xing Feng asked with an unkind expression. Su Yingtian glared fiercely at Xing Feng. Xing Feng's lips curled up into a sinister smile. Su Yingtian gnashed his teeth in hatred, but there was nothing he could do. He could only say, counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. Today, why would the Huaxia fear an island nation? Ha, easy for you to say. Xing Feng smiled as he continued, everyone, listen to his irresponsible words. He's trying to drag the country into the fire pit. For such a person to still be in charge of the National Security Bureau, a national weapon, was a blasphemy to the country and an extremely irresponsible approach. One day, he will bring a bigger disaster and drag the country into a state of eternal damnation. Some people nodded their heads in agreement, while others looked hesitant. Su Yingtian's heart skipped a beat. He finally understood Xing Feng's intention. He wanted to use this incident to remove Su Yingtian from his position as the director of the National Security Agency. This way, he would be able to get rid of a big problem. Su Yingtian's expression turned cold. How could he give in so easily? He retorted, I'm a soldier of the country. Why would I do such a foolish thing? Xing Feng, don't judge others by your own standards. Xing Feng did not back down and said, this matter concerns the security of the country, so it's not a small matter. It doesn't matter if I judge others by my own standards. What's important is that your people have made a huge mess and put the country into a passive and unfavorable situation. As the chief of the National Security Bureau, you should take responsibility for it. Many people looked at Su Yingtian with burning eyes. It was self-evident that they had already chosen to believe Xing Feng. Cough. Suddenly, the person sitting at the top coughed. Everyone immediately fell silent and looked at him. That person looked deeply at Su Yingtian and said, the most important thing now is to find a solution. When the island nation recovers, they will definitely hold you accountable. Everyone looked at Su Yingtian. This was a hot potato. If it wasn't handled well, it would hurt the country's dignity. But if it was handled well, it wouldn't be a good thing to announce. Xing Feng looked at Su Yingtian with a fake smile. Su Yingtian was helpless and could only accept this hot potato. He raised his neck and volunteered, I'm willing to reduce the impact of this matter to the lowest. Good, you have guts. As the chief of the National Security Bureau, you must have such guts. Otherwise, how can you protect the safety of the country and its citizens? That person praised. Su Yingtian sighed in relief. Since that person had said those words, it meant that there was still a way to remedy this matter. So he wouldn't be stripped of his position right now. Disappointment flashed in Xing Feng's eyes. However, he wasn't discouraged. Su Yingtian was deeply rooted in the country, and it wasn't something that could be taken down in a short period of time. Everything had to be done step by step. There was bound to be a straw that broke the camel's back, and he just had to wait and see. Furthermore, the moment Tang Zheng returns to the country, immediately take him under control. That person's expression changed as he coldly gave out an order. Su Yingtian's heart skipped a beat. He immediately explained, Tang Zheng is a rare talent, and he definitely doesn't have any bad intentions. Just when he wanted to continue, the other party had already waved his hand and stood up. The others also stood up and sent him off with their gazes before leaving the conference room one after another. Xing Feng did not leave. Instead, he looked at Su Yingtian across the conference table. The smile on Xing Feng's face gradually blossomed as he proudly said, You've always treated Tang Zheng as a treasure, and you've always protected him. Now you know how to regret it, right? He's a troublemaker, a ticking time bomb. I advise you to obediently hand him over to me, and I might even put in a good word for you for the sake of our relationship. Su Yingtian remained unmoved as he coldly looked at the other party and retorted, You want to see me make a fool of myself, right? You want to remove me from my position so that your dragon group can slowly nibble away at the National Security Bureau? Xing Feng, let me tell you, no way. Xing Feng wasn't afraid as he blinked his eyes and confidently said, Then let's wait and see. That's right, you'll only have a chance to continue playing with me if you pass this hurdle. Otherwise, you'll be completely out of the game. Suing Tian coldly snorted and left without saying a word. After returning to the National Security Bureau, he sat down on a chair and fell into deep thought. After a long time, his eyes turned cold as he sat up straight and dialed a number. Hello, Tang Zheng. Suing Tian went straight to the point. You've caused me a big mess again. What's the situation over there? Tang Zheng was on his way back to his residence when his satellite phone rang. He heard this question as soon as he picked it up. The Imperial Palace is destroyed, the Emperor is dead, and the Imperial Tutor's fate is unknown. The Imperial Tutor's residence is also almost destroyed, Tang Zheng said indifferently. After the massacre, his anger had mostly dissipated, and his voice became calm again. Imperial Tutor, the Imperial Tutor's residence? Suing Tian was slightly stunned. The Imperial Tutor's residence was too mysterious, and the information sent back didn't mention the situation of the Imperial Tutor's residence. Yes, many things have happened in the Imperial Tutor's residence, and many new discoveries have been made. As for what will happen in the end, it's not clear for the time being. Tang Zheng said truthfully. What happened? Suing Tian asked curiously. It's hard to explain in a few words. I'll talk to you in detail when we go back. Tang Zheng didn't intend to hide the matter of Orochi. It was related to Hua Xia's past and the future. It was even related to the 100 Faces Star Lord. It was wise to let the authorities know about this matter. Suing Tian really wanted to ask about this matter, but in the end, he held back and changed the topic. You've done such a big thing, which will definitely cause the island nation to be on full alert. You should take advantage of the fact that the other side hasn't completed a comprehensive layout and leave this place. Otherwise, you'll really be unable to escape. Tang Zheng didn't think so. He had Gui Qiansui, so it was easy for him to leave this island nation. No one could stop him. Thank you. I'll look for you when I go back in a few days. That's all for now. Tang Zheng had already seen the small building and quickly hung up the phone. Only Suing Tian was left holding the phone. Finally, he could only sigh helplessly. Tang Zheng looked up and saw that there was no one on the balcony. His heart thumped. You must wait for me, you must. Then, he rushed into the small building like the wind and asked loudly, Where is Marshall? The bedroom on the second floor. Whiz. He came to the bedroom door. The door was ajar, and Marshall was lying on the bed. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Lan Yu was sitting on the edge of the bed, looking at Marshall with red eyes. How is he? Tang Zheng couldn't wait to ask. Lan Yu turned his head and said, You're finally back. She's still waiting for you. Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief. He quickly walked to the bedside and held Marshall's hand. He found that her eyes were still closed and she was on the verge of death. Marshall, I'm back. I've already avenged you. The Emperor is dead and the Imperial Palace has already turned to ashes. Tang Zheng said gently. Lan Yu was slightly startled. He never thought that Tang Zheng would go out and do such a shocking thing. He patted his shoulder and said with relief, If Marshall knows about your intentions, he will definitely be very touched. Tang Zheng squeezed out a bitter smile from the corner of his mouth. Stay with her for a while. I'll go out first. Lan Yu gave the time to the two of them. He gently closed the door and walked out. Tang Zheng took the opportunity to sit at the head of the bed and held her in his arms. Her body was still soft and supple. Looking at her face in a daze, Tang Zheng couldn't help but feel sorrowful. He had the urge to cry out loud. Marshall, if the heavens give me another chance, I will definitely protect you well and accompany you forever. I will definitely not be impatient with you again, Tang Zheng muttered to himself. Suddenly, his eyes turned cold as he stared at her throat. His eyes revealed a strange light. Her throat started to move, as if something was crawling up her throat. It was very obvious. What's going on? He was shocked and immediately activated his innate chi into Marshall's body. In that instant, he knew everything about her body like the back of his hand. Chapter 702. This was truly inconceivable. Marshall's heart was beating even more vigorously, and the most important thing was that the goo worm that was wrapped around her heart had disappeared. Of course, the goo worm could not disappear into thin air. Instead, it had moved to the throat. Tang Zheng saw Marshall's movements, which meant that the goo worm was crawling along her throat towards her mouth. What was going on? Didn't the imperial tutor say that the goo worm would devour Marshall's heart? But now, the situation was clearly different. Suddenly, Tang Zheng's expression turned cold as he discovered something strange in Marshall's mouth. The goo worm's tentacles had reached out from her throat and were greedily sucking the blood in her mouth. This blood was clearly not Marshall's blood but had extended from her lips. Tang Zheng was slightly startled and immediately came to a realization. He exclaimed in shock, "I know, this is my blood." Previously, he had kissed Marshall once. At that time, he had bitten his lips and blood had seeped into Marshall's mouth. However, he did not expect that the blood would have such a strong attraction to the goo worm. It had actually lured it out of Marshall's heart. This was like seeing a trace of light in the darkness. Tang Zheng was overjoyed. Without saying a word, he bit his finger and opened Marshall's mouth. He dripped his blood into her mouth. Immediately, the goo worm seemed to have gone crazy. Its tentacles quickly rushed over. Not just one, but several of them reached into Marshall's chest and greedily sucked the blood. Tang Zheng finally understood the whole story. He had the 9-yang saint body and his blood was different from ordinary people. The goo worm especially liked his blood, so it was lured to his throat. "Come out, come out." Tang Zheng seemed to be chanting a spell, hoping to lure the goo worm out of his throat. However, things did not go as he wished. The goo worm only stretched out its tentacles but did not crawl out of the throat. It seemed that it knew that it would be dangerous if it crawled out of the throat. Damn it, this little bug is actually so cunning. Tang Zheng was greatly disappointed. He watched as the tentacles sucked his blood but the goo worm did not come out. Tang Zheng tried to stretch his finger to his throat. The blood stimulated the goo worm to become even more frenzied. All of its tentacles stretched out and wrapped around Tang Zheng's finger, sucking the blood without restraint. Hiss! Tang Zheng felt a sharp pain, but he gritted his teeth and endured it. He controlled his fingers to slowly move backwards, trying to pull out the goo worm. Well, suddenly, a painful murmur caused Tang Zheng's entire body to be startled, only to see Marshall's originally calm face reveal a painful expression. What happened? Tang Zheng was shocked. He quickly ran his real chi to investigate. F***CK. Tang Zheng could not help but curse. Why did the goo worm grow so many thorns and forcefully grab Marshall's throat? The goo worm grew several thorns and grabbed Marshall's throat, resisting Tang Zheng's pulling force. This goo worm has really gained intelligence. Tang Zheng turned pale with fright. If he could not get it out of his throat, then everything would be meaningless. He could not just let it continue to suck blood, right? Then wouldn't Tang Zheng die from all of his blood being sucked dry? He had to think of another way. Tang Zheng quickly freed his finger from the tentacles. He frowned and seemed to be deep in thought. The goo worm discovered that the delicious taste had disappeared and started to squirm. Marshall's body immediately twitched again. His muscles twisted and his face revealed a painful expression. No, this goo worm has gone crazy. Tang Zheng was helpless. He could only immediately put his hand into Marshall's mouth. All of the tentacles immediately wrapped around his hand. Wu stopped twitching and regained his composure, but Tang Zheng had a bitter expression on his face. Ouch! Tang Zheng screamed. He felt the tentacles reach into his skin and muscles. The intense pain caused Tang Zheng to involuntarily frown. He quickly focused his mind to check the situation. Ah! He could not help but cry out in alarm, only to see that the goo worm had disappeared, completely disappearing from Marshall's body. Damn it, where did it go this time? Tang Zheng stomped his foot. This thing would not disappear into thin air for no reason. It must have gone somewhere else. Before he could figure it out, he saw the blood vessels on his arm bulge up high. Then, with lightning speed, the bulge moved to his shoulder and went straight for his heart. What happened? Tang Zheng was shocked and quickly checked his body. He didn't know if he didn't see it, but when he saw it, he was really shocked. The goo worm actually shrunk and drilled into his blood vessels. Then, it started to swim towards his heart. No, I can't let it come to my heart. Wouldn't I be controlled by it? Tang Zheng's face turned pale with fright as he subconsciously thought. He quickly circulated his true qi, wanting to intercept the goo worm halfway. However, the goo worm's reaction was faster than his. It had already arrived at his heart. All of its tentacles expanded and instantly wrapped around his heart. Tang Zheng felt his heart tighten. There was a sense of suffocation. Moreover, there was a sharp pain in his chest. Tang Zheng sucked in a breath of cold air. His mind was shaken, and his eyes could not help but reveal a trace of despair. This damned goo worm preferred his blood, so it did not hesitate to give up on Marshall and drilled into his body in an attempt to completely devour his heart and blood. Don't even think about succeeding. Tang Zheng gritted his teeth and shouted. His true qi immediately wrapped around the goo worm. The goo worm knew that its nemesis had arrived, so it hurriedly wrapped itself around Tang Zheng's heart. Tang Zheng felt that his breathing was becoming difficult as he clutched his chest and staggered backwards, only stopping when he hit the wall with a pang. Tang Zheng felt that his blood was rapidly flowing out. Even his life was rapidly leaving his body. In short, the signs of death had arrived. He stared deeply at the unconscious Marshall and said with relief, "Marshall, it's good that you're alive." His consciousness gradually became blurry. He felt as if he was about to float into the clouds and fall into a bottomless valley. In short, this feeling was very mysterious, but it was not good at all. Bang bang. Bang bang. Tang Zheng's heart started to beat rapidly. His speed did not slow down at all. Tang Zheng suddenly opened his eyes. It was as if a soul-stirring light flashed through his eyes. I'm awake again. Tang Zheng's voice changed. It was heavy and dignified, causing one's heart to tremble in fear. This brat is really too weak. A small goo worm actually almost caused him to lose his life. Chi Yu's heart had awakened. This voice was Chi Yu's voice, filled with killing intent. Back then, in the crater in the northeast, it was because of the awakening of Chi Yu's heart that Tang Zheng was able to successfully absorb the dragon's soul and defeat the Heavenly Emperor's brother. This time, Chi Yu's heart was attacked by the goo worm. Chi Yu's consciousness had finally recovered. When he saw Tang Zheng's terrible situation, he could not help but complain. Just a small goo worm. Then use it as my nourishment. Chi Yu's heart said casually. As soon as he finished speaking, Chi Yu's heart emitted a bloody mist, which instantly enveloped the goo worm. As if the goo worm had seen its nemesis, it started to twist crazily, trying to break free from the restraints of Chi Yu's heart. Ha, you want to escape from such a small matter? Dream on. Chi Yu's heart said in disdain. Before he finished speaking, the goo worm started to struggle. It kept twisting and waving its tentacles. Bang! Suddenly, the goo worm exploded, turning into a cloud of mist that enveloped Chi Yu's heart. After a while, the mist completely seeped into Chi Yu's heart. Everything returned to normal. This kid's character is not bad. He is decisive in killing and has a firm heart. With some nurturing, he will be a promising talent. It's just that his cultivation is too weak. It's simply a disgrace to the reputation of the 9-yang saint body. How can a person with the 9-yang saint body only have such a little cultivation? Yamada no Orochi has come out. Even the 100 transformations Star-Lord has come. This world is becoming more and more interesting. I really look forward to recovering my strength and rebuilding my glory. Qi Yu's heart sighed. Tang Zheng, what's wrong? Lan Yu's voice came from outside the door. She had heard the commotion in the room, so she had rushed over. Qi Yu's heart stopped talking. The moment Lan Yu opened the door, everything returned to normal. Tang Zheng's eyes also opened at this moment. Nothing. Tang Zheng replied. Lan Yu heaved a sigh of relief and said, I heard your cries of pain and thought something had happened. How is Marshall? Tang Zheng's gaze turned and landed on Marshall. He saw that her expression was calm, like a sleeping baby. She's fine. Lan Yu was startled and almost burst into tears. She wiped the corner of her eyes and walked over with large strides, saying, her face is much rosier. Ah, Tang Zheng, why is your face so pale? Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat as he stammered. Before he could finish his sentence, he was dumbstruck as he looked at his heart in disbelief. Where's the goo worm? The goo worm had disappeared, leaving behind a strong heart that was beating rhythmically. There was nothing else going on in his body. What's going on? Why did the goo worm disappear? Even though Tang Zheng was resourceful, he could not guess what was going on. Lan Yu frowned and asked suspiciously, Goo worm? What happened to the goo worm? Tang Zheng immediately pulled open the clothes on his chest. His skin was smooth and there was nothing wrong with it. Lan Yu finally saw through the clues and asked anxiously, Tang Zheng, don't lie to me. What happened to the ground? Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief. Joy appeared on his face as he said, Marshall is fine, the goo worm in her body has completely disappeared. Ah! Lan Yu was shocked and cried out in alarm, how could this be? How did you do it? Tang Zheng guessed that the goo worm must have disappeared in his body. As for how it disappeared, he did not know. However, he still told her about how the goo worm absorbed his blood and then accidentally drilled into his body. Lan Yu's heart trembled when she heard this, her eyelids twitched, and her expression was filled with pain. She could not help but hold on to Tang Zheng's hand and said emotionally, Tang Zheng, you silly child, you almost harmed yourself, do you know that? Tang Zheng felt the other party's heartfelt concern and said, am I not fine? Chapter 703. As soon as Lan Yu finished speaking, Marshall let out a murmur and faintly woke up. Tang Zheng and Lan Yu were overjoyed, they immediately surrounded him and asked with concern, Marshall, how do you feel? Marshall opened his eyes with difficulty, looked at Tang Zheng, and then at Lan Yu. He was wild with joy. Mistress, I see you again. Lan Yu stroked Marshall's hair, his nose sour, and said emotionally, silly child, for us to travel thousands of miles to Island Nation, you almost lost your life. Marshall is useless. I was unable to save Master, Mistress, and all my fellow sect members. Marshall said in shame, his eyes wet. Lan Yu's face turned serious as he said, who dares to say that you're useless? I'll beat him up until his mother doesn't even recognize him. Marshall broke into a smile and said, where are Master and the others? Lan Yu's expression stiffened as he comforted her, don't worry, the others are all outside. As for your master, he still has some matters to attend to. You just escaped danger, so you need to rest well. Marshall revealed a puzzled expression and said, I only remember what happened before I fainted. Who saved me? Lan Yu smiled as he looked at Tang Zheng. Marshall's gaze turned as he asked, you saved me? Of course, out of all of us, only he has the ability to do so. He almost lost his life because of it. Lan Yu said. Marshall's eyes revealed a moved expression, and a blush flashed across his face. He looked at Tang Zheng in a daze and said, thank you. Tang Zheng's face also blossomed with a brilliant smile. He subconsciously held her hand and said, this is what I should do. You young people take your time to chat. I'll be leaving first. Lan Yu smiled meaningfully and even winked mysteriously at Marshall before closing the door and leaving. There were only 2 people left in the room, and they immediately fell into silence. The 2 of them looked at each other, then Marshall hurriedly looked away. She had a clear feeling that the world after waking up was completely different from before, especially Tang Zheng's gaze, which was even softer and filled with deep affection. This was something that had never happened before, causing her heart to palpitate and her heart to race. Tang Zheng coughed and broke the silence. "Are you tired? Do you want to rest for a while?" "Not tired." Marshall blurted out, looked at him, and said, "In order to save me, you almost sacrificed yourself?" "It's not that exaggerated," Tang Zheng said lightly. But the more he said this, the more certain Wu was that this was the case. He couldn't help but hold his hand. Tang Zheng's heart warmed, and he also held her hand tightly. Their eyes met, and this time, they did not avoid each other's gaze. The 2 pairs of eyes that were close to each other silently communicated, transmitting each other's feelings. The atmosphere was changing bit by bit, and a mysterious feeling was brewing in the air. Tang Zheng bent down and gently kissed her lips. Wu did not resist, but instead closed his eyes and quietly felt it, as if his heart was about to melt. The things that the 2 of them had done in the past were also unable to resist the magic of this kiss. It was so beautiful that it made one's heart bloom with joy. Every pore on one's body seemed to open, giving one a kind of limitless power. Their lips parted. Tang Zheng looked at Wu, who was so close to him that he could almost see the fine hair on her face and feel her breathing. Wu had her eyes closed the entire time. She knew that Tang Zheng was staring at her, so she was too embarrassed to open her eyes. She didn't know when she had become so shy. She sensed her own thoughts, and the blush on her face became even redder. She was like a ripe apple, tender and alluring. "Rest well." Tang Zheng did not push his luck, and said gently, "I'll be outside, if there's anything, call me." Wu Weiwei opened her eyes and narrowed them into slits. She nodded her head and watched Tang Zheng leave. Then, she let out a long breath. The sweet feeling lingered in her heart for a long time. Unknowingly, she fell asleep with a smile on her face. Outside the house, Lan Yu looked at Tang Zheng with a smile and said, "Why don't you accompany me for a while longer? She's a little tired. I'll let her rest first. There'll be plenty of time in the future." Tang Zheng said, "Marshall is a good girl. She will remember your kindness." Tang Zheng felt ashamed of his inferiority. Most of the time, it was Wu who treated her better, while he felt that Wu was dispensable. He could summon her and leave her at any time. "Is he back?" Tang Zheng changed the topic. Lan Yu looked out the window at the night sky, shook his head and said, "We left clues for him along the way. He will follow the clues to find us. It's been so long, but he still hasn't found us. Will something happen to him?" Tang Zheng couldn't help but worry. If he knew that you were so worried about him, he would definitely be very gratified. Lan Yu sighed. A hint of panic flashed past Tang Zheng's eyes. His feelings for his biological parents were already in a mess, and even he himself couldn't explain it clearly. Hearing Lan Yu's words, he felt a sense of panic. He quickly shifted his gaze and said, "Do you need us to go find him?" "No need. He will have a way. You have to trust him." Lan Yu's gaze was firm. Tang Zheng was at his wit's end, and could only choose to believe in her judgment. At this moment, Wu Junshan was still in the Imperial Advisor's mansion, which was already surrounded by layers upon layers of troops. Although the Heavenly Emperor had died and the country had indeed fallen into chaos, they had still set up a certain emergency mechanism. After the emergency mechanism was activated, the various government orders were passed down in an orderly manner. First, a large number of troops surrounded the Imperial Palace and the Imperial Advisor's mansion, not allowing anyone to enter or leave. The army did not completely enter the Imperial Advisor's mansion. The imperial advisor's mansion occupied an extremely large area, and that small village was only a drop in the ocean. The larger area was the mountain and lake behind the village, and the mountain was even connected to the sea. Wu Junshan stood at the peak of the mountain. Half of the mountain had already been destroyed, and it was a complete mess. This was the result of the battle between Yamada no Orochi and the Hundred Faces Star-Lord. It was terrifying, and it was almost impossible for an ordinary person to reach such a level. Wu Junshan's expression was cold, and his clothes were a little messy. There was still a trace of shock in his eyes. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have imagined such a battle. Although he was an expert, he was still not strong enough to face these two tyrannical fellows. "Master, let's go." In the darkness, an ethereal voice sounded. Wu Junshan was unmoved. He looked in the direction of the sea and said, "What do you think the final result of their battle will be?" Yamada no Orochi is still no match for the Hundred Faces Star-Lord. Defeat is only a matter of time. So the Hundred Faces Star-Lord will have the help of Yamada no Orochi? Wu Junshan frowned. This is something that can't be stopped. Shadow, the days ahead will only get more and more difficult. Wu Junshan sighed. If you hadn't stopped me, I'm afraid I would have disappeared from this world. Shadow, a martial scholar, was really like a shadow, following beside Wu Junshan. It was all thanks to the shadow that they were able to leave the martial organization so smoothly. This time, the shadow had helped Wu Junshan again. Wu Junshan could not remember how many times the shadow had helped him. It was as if the shadow had become a part of his body. "Master, this is what I should do." The shadow calmly said. "Let's go. We'll catch up with Lan Yu and leave this place. I have a feeling that the good days of the island nation are coming to an end." Wu Junshan said meaningfully. The two disappeared. In the ruins, a few stones moved, and a person came out, the imperial teacher. The imperial teacher was covered in dust and looked in a sorry state. He looked in the direction where Wu Junshan disappeared, and then looked in the direction of the sea. He muttered to himself, "There is always someone better than you." Hua Xia's famous saying is too accurate. Without a doubt, the imperial teacher used to be headstrong and arrogant. Although he did not think that he was the best in the world, he was very confident that he was one of the strongest people in the world. But after seeing this unprecedented battle, he realized that he was the frog at the bottom of the well. He only saw the blue sky above his head. Wu Junshan, the shadow beside him, and even his wife are all top-notch experts. Compared to them, even I am slightly inferior, not to mention that childlike multiform Star-Lord. Who is he? How can he have such terrifying strength? There was still a lingering fear between his brows. In front of Hundred Change Star-Lord, he had no resistance at all. He was like an ant that could be easily squashed to death. How is the battle between God Orochi and Hundred Change Star-Lord? He looked at the sea, but could not see anything clearly. Kacha! Suddenly, a bolt of lightning fell from the sky and landed in the sea. Thick black clouds accumulated on the surface of the sea. Then, the rumbling of thunder sounded like a drum, deafening to the ears. This is their battle. The imperial teacher was frightened. Imperial preceptor. Suddenly, a figure appeared behind the imperial preceptor and knelt down with a thud. The imperial teacher turned around and saw his favorite disciple. He was pleasantly surprised. "Junko, are you okay?" Junko's face was as pale as paper. Her shoulders trembled as if she was terrified. She said in a trembling voice, "Junko was lucky to escape. The others are dead. They died in the hands of that child." When Junko recalled that scene, her heart felt like it was going to jump out of her throat. She had never seen such a powerful person in her entire life. He didn't even need to touch them, and the others were killed without being able to resist. It was not a simple killing, but a massacre. The strong murderous aura emitted by the child's every movement made people unable to think of resisting. She had to overcome the fear in her heart with great difficulty to escape this calamity. The imperial teacher's expression did not change at all. He said lightly, I know, sacrifice is inevitable. Imperial teacher, we have to avenge them. Junko's eyes bloomed with flames of hatred as she said resolutely. The imperial teacher showed a self-mocking smile and said, oh, revenge? He paused for a moment and said, there is nothing I can do. Junko had never seen the imperial teacher so dispirited. After she escaped, she did not see the great battle just now. So she did not understand the situation in front of her. It's over. Everything is settled. The imperial teacher said dispiritedly. As if to prove this sentence, the thunder and lightning on the sea stopped. Chapter 704. This aura made people have an impulse to kowtow. Junko looked at it with a pale face and asked, State Preceptor, what is that? The imperial advisor was silent, but his face became serious. Boom! Rivers and seas were overturned, and huge waves surged up on the surface of the sea. Junko subconsciously took a step back and exclaimed, Tsunami. State Preceptor was still motionless as he stared at the monstrous waves. Although Junko had the urge to run away, she stopped abruptly when she saw State Preceptor's tall and straight figure. The huge waves stopped in front of the mountain. The seawater was like a waterfall. With a splash, it fell into the sea, splashing water vapor all over the sky. It was like a rainstorm. A huge monster quietly revealed its true face. It was none other than Yamada no Orochi. However, the 8 heads of Yamada no Orochi were protected by a person standing at the top, 100 faces. Although he was still dressed like a child, he looked down from above like a king looking down on the world. Obviously, as the imperial advisor expected, Yamada no Orochi had been subdued by 100 faces. Yamada no Orochi lowered its noble head. This was a world where the strong were respected, especially the creatures who came from the cultivation world. They understood the principle of the strong being respected and had a deeper understanding of the law of the jungle. If they didn't submit, they would die. Yamada no Orochi obviously didn't want to die, so it could only submit. The imperial advisor's face changed a few times, and the loss and pain in his eyes were self-evident. Although he had expected this result, he still had mixed feelings when he saw it with his own eyes. All these years, Yamada no Orochi had been respected by him as a god. In the long history, both the imperial advisor and the emperor respected Yamada no Orochi as a god, so it was called Yamada no Orochi. Deities were lofty and undefeatable. However, at this moment, it was proven that Yamada no Orochi was still a long way from being a god. It was because the imperial advisor and the emperor were frogs at the bottom of the well that they worshipped Yamada no Orochi as a god. This was equivalent to 100 faces slapping the imperial advisor in the face. He couldn't resist and could only raise his head to take it. Oh, this old man is quite interesting. He is a grandmaster warrior. 100 faces said with interest. It was the first time he saw the imperial advisor. Yamada no Orochi said, Master, this is the imperial advisor of the island nation. He is second only to one person. Huh, is that so? Is he really that powerful? The 100 transformation star sovereign curled his lips into a brilliant smile. But this bright smile made Orochi's heart tremble. He hurriedly said, That's just the nonsense of ordinary people. He is also your servant, master. He is under your command. It seems that a grandmaster martial artist can also be a servant and do some miscellaneous chores. 100 Faces Star Lord accepted Orochi's good intentions and said. Junko had already seen the appearance of the 100 Change Star Lord. Wasn't this the murderer who had killed countless of her fellow disciples? And what was that monster? Although Junko was a disciple of the Imperial Advisor, the existence of Yamada no Orochi was only known by the Imperial Advisor. Even if she was the Imperial Advisor's confidant, she definitely didn't know about Yamada no Orochi. Of course, she didn't understand the meaning of Yamada no Orochi. She was furious when she heard that the imperial advisor was reduced to a servant. The imperial advisor was the person she respected the most. How could he be insulted like this? She took a deep breath and stood up without a care for her own safety. She scolded, "Shut up, I won't allow you to insult the state preceptor." Silence. Dead silence. All eyes were focused on Junko. She felt as if a huge boulder was pressing down on her, and there was a suffocating feeling. But she gritted her teeth and held on like a strong little warrior. The imperial advisor's face was pale. He didn't expect Junko to be so bold. If he angered her, his life would be in danger. "Junko, shut up." The imperial advisor scolded and then respectfully said to Yamada no Orochi, "Yamada no Orochi, she is young and ignorant. Please don't lower yourself to her level." Yamada no Orochi's huge eyes seemed to have magic as he stared at Junko. Junko stubbornly raised her neck and looked at Yamada no Orochi face to face. Those huge eyes seemed to want to swallow her soul, causing her to feel fear and tremble from the bottom of her heart. "How dare you be disrespectful to my master and me? It's a capital offense," Yamada no Orochi suddenly said. The imperial advisor's body trembled. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. He just looked at Junko with pity. The imperial advisor had made his decision. Since he couldn't go against it, he could only listen to the arrangement of fate and submit to the Zodiac Star Lord. Although he was extremely unwilling to do so, he had to do it in order to survive. He secretly comforted himself that perhaps it would be easier for him to achieve his previous goal after following the Zodiac Star Lord. He wanted to plead for Junko, but after seeing Yamada no Orochi's attitude, he decided to give up. He didn't want to take the risk. Junko was his disciple, but she was more important than his own life. Junko looked at the imperial advisor in disappointment. It wasn't because he didn't want to plead for her, but because of his cowardice. He actually submitted to the Zodiac Star Lord. Where did his usual pride go? Why was he so afraid of death? The high image of the imperial advisor in her heart instantly collapsed. She raised her head in despair, but she didn't lose her pride. She looked at the others with contempt and said, "Come on, kill me. Anyway, you have already killed the other disciples of the imperial advisor's residence. It doesn't matter if you kill one more." "Ha, interesting, interesting." Suddenly, a crisp applause broke the silence. The Zodiac Star Lord clapped his little hands with a mysterious smile on his face. "It's interesting to have such a person as a servant. There are too many spineless people like that. It's not rare. The rarer something is, the more valuable it is. This little girl is the rarest talent." The Zodiac Star Lord didn't hesitate to praise. "Little snake, I'll give that guy to you. After eating a master warrior, your cultivation will recover a little," the Zodiac Star Lord said. Hearing this, the state preceptor's expression changed drastically. He exclaimed in disbelief, "Don't kill me, I will obediently be your servant. I will never be disloyal." The Zodiac Star Lord didn't even look at him. All his attention was focused on Junko. He said, "Didn't I already tell you? There are spineless people everywhere. What use do I have for you?" After a pause, 3 words came out from the Zodiac Star Lord's mouth, "Eat him." The imperial advisor was desperate. He kept compromising, but it turned out to be the worst way. The Zodiac Star Lord didn't buy it. Instead, Junko was appreciated by the Zodiac Star Lord. This was really God's will. The imperial advisor wasn't a person who accepted his fate. When he heard the 3 words from the Zodiac Star Lord, his body flashed and turned into a stream of light, rushing out of the imperial advisor's residence. The Zodiac Star Lord still didn't hesitate to look at him. It was as if the imperial advisor's life and death didn't matter to him. Or, he knew that the imperial advisor couldn't escape. The huge tail of the Yamada no Orochi arrived first. The sound of the tail breaking through the air was loud, as if it was going to tear the air apart. Bang! With a muffled sound, the Imperial Advisor was swept across the waist and flew into the air. He let out a heart-wrenching scream as blood danced in the wind. Junko's heart was fiercely clenched. She wanted to help, but it was already too late. She could only watch as the Imperial Advisor flew in the air like a willow catkin. The huge tail was like a whip, dancing in the air and wrapped around the Imperial Advisor. The Imperial Advisor was suffocating, but he couldn't bear the pain. He roared and slapped the scales with both hands. Using all his strength, the strength of this slap could be said to be terrifying. With a loud bang, a piece of the scales was slapped off, bringing with it a dazzling stream of blood. Roar! How dare you! I'm going to eat you! Yamada no Orochi finally exploded in anger. Although it had pledged allegiance to the Zodiac Star Lord, it had always been high and mighty in front of the Imperial Advisor. Even now, it still maintained this condescending position. But the Imperial Advisor dared to attack it and even injured it. This was absolutely intolerable. The huge tail swung back, and the Imperial Advisor flew in the air. Before he could break free, a bloody mouth came towards him. A disgusting smell assaulted his face, almost suffocating the Imperial Advisor. His eyes were immediately filled with despair as he looked at the bloody mouth and long fangs that were getting closer and closer. Ah! The Imperial Advisor let out a heart-wrenching scream of unwillingness, and then, he fell into the mouth of Yamada no Orochi. The scream came to an abrupt end. The Imperial Advisor was bitten in half, and the sound of bones breaking was particularly clear in the dark night. It was also particularly ear-piercing, making people involuntarily shudder. Junko trembled and almost fainted. Watching her idol fall into the mouth of the monster, this visual impact almost made her collapse. If it wasn't for her extraordinary perseverance, she would have been scared out of her wits, but her body was already trembling uncontrollably. Kacha! Kacha! The crisp sound of bones breaking was incessant, and blood overflowed from the corner of Yamada no Orochi's bloody mouth. That was the Imperial Advisor's blood. After Yamada no Orochi swallowed, the Imperial Advisor completely disappeared from its mouth and entered its stomach, completing the journey of his life. Suddenly, Yamada no Orochi's eyes lit up instantly, like a searchlight in the dark night, emitting a breathtaking light. Turning its gaze, it swept towards Junko, and Junko subconsciously stepped back. Don't be afraid, I won't kill you. 100 Faces Star Lord said patiently, like a strange uncle tricking a little girl. Become my servant, and your life in the future will be 1,000 times, 10,000 times more interesting than now. Before his voice fell, he was already in front of Junko, but he didn't move. Instead, it was the head of Yamada no Orochi that carried him to Junko. He slowly stretched out a finger and pointed at Junko's forehead. Junko wanted to dodge, but found that she couldn't move at all. She was firmly locked by the other party's aura. Chapter 705. The finger of the 100 transformation star sovereign blossomed with a dazzling light, and this was the only light left in Junko's eyes. There was an explosion in her mind, and countless information flooded in, filling up every single one of her brain cells and nerves. Her pupils instantly enlarged. As a ninja, she could be regarded as a beginner in magic. Seeing this information, she was overjoyed and almost went crazy. She understood the value of these things too well. Didn't the state preceptor rack his brains to capture Tangjeng for these things? Magic. The real Huaxia magic, not the superficial ninjutsu. She felt that every word in her mind was so beautiful, exuding a charm that made her enchanted. Rumble. A burst of sound like the yellow river bursting the dike, the sound of the surging river suddenly sounded in her body. Her complexion greatly changed, and she quickly checked the condition of her body, only to see that the sound came from her meridians. At this moment, her meridians were like a big river, and the true qi flowing in them was like a river, surging and full of power. The true qi widened her meridians, which was conducive to storing more true qi. What made her even more ecstatic was that her cultivation was soaring rapidly. Her true body had reached the speed of a rocket, and her true chi was rising steadily, impulsively reaching one realm after another, which she didn't dare to dream of recently. Moreover, there seemed to be no end to it. She was so happy that she almost fainted. Why did such a good thing fall on her? In the past, she cultivated painstakingly, comprehending the sword in the sword forest, but it was not as good as this instant change. Her eyes couldn't help but fall on Hundred Faces Star-Lord's face. That young face and thin body actually contained such a terrifying power. She couldn't help but gradually understand the State Preceptor's feelings. It was not that he didn't dare to resist, but that there was no room for resistance. She was not afraid because she didn't know. Now that she finally experienced the horror of Hundred Faces Star-Lord, she gradually felt awe in her heart. The finger left her forehead, and the true chi in her body stopped soaring. But for Junko, the current state was the peak that she had never been in before. The 100 Transformations Star Sovereign looked at her and said casually, "I helped you to reach the 9th grade of fasting, which is equivalent to the 9th grade of innate realm. The inner strength in your body has been completely dissolved and replaced with true chi, which is the foundation of a cultivator's cultivation. As for the Grandmaster realm, you need to comprehend it yourself. That way, you can gain more. 9th grade innate stage, 9th grade Anidia." Junko sucked in a breath of cold air. She had never dreamed that she would reach such a realm so quickly. Moreover, it was not the 9th grade innate stage, but the 9th grade Anidia stage. Although she had practiced ninjutsu before, she was still a martial artist and not a cultivator. That was because most of the power in her body was transformed from inner strength. However, it was different now. The 100 Faces Star-Lord used the enlightenment technique to dissolve the original inner strength in her body and used true chi to supplement it. Thus, she was completely transformed into a cultivator who could practice all kinds of profound and unfathomable spells. Without a doubt, Junko was overjoyed by this change. Although she had not tested it yet, she already felt that if she used the previous illusion technique, it would definitely be twice the result with half the effort. "From now on, you are my servant. I will teach you more powerful spells," the 100 Faces Star Sovereign said. Junko hesitated for a moment and acquiesced to the 100 Faces Star Sovereign's words. Facing this kind of temptation and being intimidated by the 100 Faces Star Sovereign, she finally did not have the courage to refute and chose to compromise. She looked at the 100 Faces Star Sovereign and asked nervously, "Then when can I defeat Tang Zheng?" Tang Zheng is also at the 9th grade of fasting, but he has more spells and a divine weapon in hand. Of course, you are not his opponent now, but as long as you follow me, that day will not be too far away. Yes. Junko nodded heavily, and her eyes flashed with intense sparks. The Imperial Preceptor's residence was destroyed, and even the Imperial Preceptor's body was not left. Junko did not attribute all of this to the 100 Faces Star Sovereign, but to Tang Zheng. The fuse of all of this was Tang Zheng. If it were not for him, everything would be normal, and there would not be so many things at all. Therefore, she hated Tang Zheng to the bone, and wanted to eat his flesh and drink his blood. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign smiled and looked into the distance. From the mountain peak, he could see the situation outside the Imperial Preceptor's residence clearly. He narrowed his eyes slightly and patted Orochi's shoulder, saying, "Don't you want to increase your cultivation? Enjoy the delicious meal." Orochi heard this, and a terrifying cold light and murderous intent burst out from its eyes. The snake's tongue flickered, and its huge eyes stared into the distance. There were many soldiers there, and they surrounded the Imperial Preceptor's residence. They were armed and ready, and they did not know that misfortune was about to befall them. When they saw several figures floating down from the mountain peak in the distance, everyone's nerves became more tense, and they subconsciously tightened their grip on the guns and ammunition in their hands. "Who are you? Stop right there!" the officer shouted, trying to stop them. But when they approached, and especially when they saw the huge body of Orochi, everyone trembled in fear. Some of them could not even hold the guns in their hands, and they fell to the ground. What kind of monster is that? Everyone's mind was full of question marks, and some smart people immediately shouted in fright, "Open fire, don't let them come close." Da-da-da, the bullets were like raindrops, covering the sky and covering the earth as they shot towards the few people. Roar! Orochi let out a furious roar, "Kill!" Yamada no Orochi looked down at the crowd from above. The bullets clanged as they hit its scales, but all of them ricocheted back without leaving a single mark. Suddenly, someone finally understood the huge gap in strength between them and the enemy. Their faces were pale, and their hands holding the guns could not help but tremble. "Humph, it's my turn now." Yamada no Orochi laughed sinisterly. His 8 bloody mouths swooped down like a gust of wind, crashing into the crowd with a whoosh. Ah! Instantly, screams that sounded like pigs being slaughtered rang out one after another, piercing through the clouds. One by one, the mouths of the Yamada no Orochi bit down on the bodies of many people. Kacha, the bodies were torn apart at the waist, and then they were swallowed into the stomach of the Yamada no Orochi. 100 Faces looked at all of this with a smile, as if this hellish slaughter was nothing out of the ordinary for him, and there was no fear at all. Junko's face was as pale as paper, and her stomach was churning. Finally, she could not help but vomit at the side, as if she was going to vomit out her gallbladder. 100 Faces glanced at her from the corner of his eyes, and the corner of his mouth hooked up into a meaningful smile, and he said lightly, "You have such a big reaction to such a small scene, it seems that you need to train more in the future." Junko put her hands on her thighs, bent over, and touched the corner of her mouth, and asked in shock, "Why did you do this? These people are innocent people, why did you kill them?" Orochi wants to improve his cultivation, so of course he needs these food. 100 Faces said matter-of-factly. Food? Junko was startled, and then she became angry. "You treat my people as food? What's wrong with that?" 100 Faces' smile did not diminish, and he stared straight at Junko. That pair of unfathomable eyes made Junko's heart thump, and she subconsciously took 3 steps back. These people are just ants, and they will die in a few decades. Now that they have died in the mouth of Orochi, at least they can be of some use, and this is their honor. You. Junko swallowed the word pervert that was at the tip of her tongue. No matter how much she said, it was equal to nothing. Everything had happened, and it was irreversible. Her heart seemed to be bleeding, and she watched her people die in the mouth of Orochi, and become the delicious food in his stomach. Perhaps, the state preceptor and the emperor never dreamed that Orochi, who they worshipped day and night, would eventually become the nightmare of the people of the island nation, and they would treat the people of the island nation as delicious food. Perhaps, this was the fate of the people of the island nation, a kind of punishment for the crimes committed in the monstrous war of the past. It was just that this kind of punishment was very cruel, and it made people tremble with fear. But compared with the killings committed by their ancestors in the past, in fact, Orochi's punishment was just a small matter. Orochi was like entering the land of no words, and no one could stop him. One by one, the people of the island nation were swallowed by him. This scene of Shura hell almost made people's hearts stop beating. Junko's eyes were filled with tears, and she turned her head, unable to bear to see this cruel scene. 100 Faces frowned and said, "As my servant, if I say east, it must be east, and if I say west, it must be west. Since I brought you here, you must see this scene, and you must see it all." As soon as she finished speaking, Junko found that a huge force was controlling her neck, forcing her to turn her head little by little. She could only watch this scene with her eyes wide open, unable to even blink. She finally deeply experienced the terror of the 100 Change Star Sovereign. Since she had become his servant, it was almost impossible to go against his will. "Humph, you don't want your people to be eaten, do you? But I tell you, since you are my servant, you are no longer a person of the island nation. You don't even belong to any country, you only belong to me, 100 Faces. Put away your pitiful heart, this world is cruel, only the strong can survive, the weak only have the same fate as them, at the mercy of others. the 100 Transformations Star Lord said with a murderous aura. Junko bit her lips tightly and didn't say a word. A fierce light flashed in 100 Faces' eyes, and he said sternly, Orochi, after you enjoy these people, march to the big city, where there are more delicious food waiting for you. Chapter 706. Early in the morning, Tang Jing accompanied Wu on the balcony, bathing in the rising sun. This place was not far from the sea, and one could see the sea level. A red sun slowly rose from the sea level, shining brightly, illuminating the entire world. Wu Zhuo took a deep breath and said, "It's so good to be able to breathe fresh air." She had practically walked through the gates of hell, and her mental state had undergone quite a bit of change. Last night, she had slept soundly, but she had never slept so sweetly before. Her dreams were filled with Tang Zheng's figure. Tang Zheng turned his head to look at her. Her cheeks were suffused with radiance, and she was exceptionally beautiful, like a fairy that had descended to the mortal world. Tang Zheng smiled slightly and said, "After a night of rest, your injuries have mostly healed. This is all thanks to you." Wu Zhuo looked at him. "This is what I should do." After Tang Zheng finished speaking, his gaze was attracted by a person in the distance. His pupils constricted as he said, "He's back." Wu also immediately turned his head to look, revealing an excited expression as he shouted in ecstasy, "Master is back." Hua! Many people rushed out of the house and rushed towards Wu Junshan to welcome him. Lan Yu walked at the front. When the couple was young, their relationship was extremely good. However, because of Tang Zheng's matter, their relationship was broken. However, ever since Tang Zheng appeared, this crack had gradually been mended, and the relationship between the two of them began to improve by leaps and bounds. Tang Zheng and Wu stood on the balcony, and saw that Wu Junshan was in a sorry state. His clothes were tattered in many places, and it was obvious that he had experienced a fierce battle. Although he did not see it with his own eyes, he could imagine how intense the battle was. Tang Zheng understood that if not for Wu Junshan, it would not have been so easy for them to leave the imperial advisor's mansion so easily. Wu Junshan also raised his head, his gaze first landing on Tang Zheng's body, his expression extremely complicated, then it stopped on Wu Zhuo's face, revealing a look of joy between his brows. Wu Junshan walked up with the crowd surrounding him. Tang Zheng said slowly, "You're back." Wu Junshan squeezed out a smile and nodded, "I'm back." They didn't break through the layer of paper between father and son, but it was obvious that their relationship had improved. Wu Junshan wasn't in a hurry to get results. Getting Tang Zheng to take the initiative to speak was already a rare improvement. "Marshal, how are your injuries?" Wu Junshan asked again. "Master, Tang Zheng has cured me." Wu Junshan revealed a gratified expression as he took a deep look at Tang Zheng. Subconsciously, Tang Zheng was still somewhat resistant to Wu Junshan. His expression turned solemn as he asked, "What happened to the 100 Change Stars Sovereign and Yamada no Orochi?" Wu Junshan's expression also tightened. Seeing this, the others all gathered around, wanting to know the final result. After a great battle between Multiform Star Lord and Orochi, Orochi escaped into the sea, and Multiform Star Lord chased after him. It seems that the two sides fought again in the sea. As for the final result, I did not see it with my own eyes, but according to my many years of experience, Orochi will definitely not be able to defeat Multiform Star Lord. Sooner or later, he will fall into his hands. Hearing this, everyone's expression turned grim. 100 Change Star Sovereign was already powerful enough, and with the help of Yamada no Orochi, who else in this world could stop them? Everyone looked at each other in dismay as they thought of this matter. Wu was the first to speak, "Then isn't this world in danger?" Wu Junshan did not say anything, but it was equivalent to tacitly agreeing. Tang Zheng sighed. Even without the 100 Change Star Sovereign, this world was not necessarily safe. There were too many dangers in this world, but ordinary people did not know about them. "What should we do next?" Lan Yu asked. We can't go back to that island, and the island nation naturally can't stay there for long. As for Hua Xia, with the pervasive Li Palace and the mysterious power behind the Li Palace and the Great Elder, our situation is not optimistic. If we go back, we might be like sheep in a tiger's den. Of course, Lan Yu was not afraid, but she had to consider the safety of the others. These dozens of people who had always followed her husband and wife, she had to think for them. This time, Wu Junshan also fell into silence. He, who was resourceful, was at his wits' end. Originally, he had always thought that his plan was flawless, and that the uninhabited island was his last resort. But in the end, after decades of planning, he still couldn't escape the investigation of the Li Palace. Furthermore, he was wiped out in one fell swoop, almost burying everyone's lives. This was his mistake as a leader. Therefore, when Lan Yu asked this question, he couldn't give an answer for the time being. Silence, the oppressive atmosphere spread out. Many people subconsciously lowered their heads, their morale low. The impact of this incident on everyone was self-evident. Now that they saw that their leader was at his wits' end, the hesitation and helplessness in everyone's hearts completely exploded. Seeing everyone's worried expressions, Tang Zheng's mind began to work. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. He remembered the pirate island he had destroyed. That island's whereabouts were uncertain, and even the warships of various countries couldn't find it. And wasn't that island carried by Gui Qiansui? This was a moving island that could change its position at will. It was almost impossible for the enemy to investigate it. Moreover, the island's defense would be combined with Gui Qiansui's. Gui Qiansui had a natural advantage in defense. If he built a new moving island like this, wouldn't these people have a place to go? He couldn't wait, his eyebrows dancing as he said, "I have an idea." The others immediately gathered around. These people were more and more trusting of Tang Zheng. At critical moments, he was always able to turn danger into safety. His strange moves made people involuntarily look forward to it. What idea? Wu Junshan couldn't wait to ask. We want to build a moving island on the sea, so that when everyone lives on it, the enemy will find it extremely difficult to find us. We will be safe. Tang Zheng said solemnly. Moving island? Everyone was stunned. They didn't expect that Tang Zheng would come up with such an outrageous idea. It was simply unrealistic. As if he saw through everyone's thoughts, Tang Zheng confidently smiled and said, "For others, a moving island is almost impossible, but for me, it is not impossible." Oh! Everyone's interest was aroused. Even if Wu and Tang Zheng had crossed the ocean together and had seen the magic of Gui Qiansui, for a moment, they didn't think of this point. Looking at everyone's anxious eyes, Tang Zheng didn't keep them in suspense. He faintly smiled and said, "Gui Qiansui can do this. It can carry an island in the sea and can move it at any time. It even has a defensive function." Gui Qiansui. Everyone subconsciously turned their head to look inside the room. The two small figures were behind the floor-to-ceiling window, and their spirits were not very good. Gui Qiansui was injured, and a crack appeared on his turtle shell. Xiao Bai was also injured, but it was not as serious as Gui Qiansui. But after the continuous battle last night, it consumed a lot of energy. So, the two little guys were a little dispirited. It can do this? Everyone still felt that it was inconceivable. How could Gui Qiansui's small body carry such a huge island? Gui Qiansui opened his eyes. Last night, he had been healing. When he heard everyone's conversation, he staggered out. Looking up at everyone, he slowly said, "Immortal, I am seriously injured. My current spiritual power is not enough to carry an island." Hearing a turtle speak human language, except for a few people, most of them showed a look of seeing a ghost. Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. He immediately saw the crack on Gui Qiansui's back. If not for saving him, Gui Qiansui would not have been bitten by Yamada no Orochi's fangs, let alone be seriously injured. "Gui Qiansui, don't worry. I will find a way to heal you. Tang Zheng said seriously with a calm face. Gui Qiansui shook his head and said, Immortal, this time my injury is very serious. I won't be able to recover in a short time. Tang Zheng said without hesitation, let's find a way together. There will be a solution. After a pause, he said to Wu Junshan and the others, it seems that we will have to stay here for a while. During this time, everyone must be on high alert. Last night, I killed the emperor and destroyed the Kokyo. The island nation is in complete chaos. Moreover, the other party must want to find us even if they have to dig 3 feet into the ground. So, they may follow any clues to find us. Most people did not know that Tang Zheng had done such a big thing last night. Especially Wu, who looked at him in shock. Seeing this, Lan Yu reminded, at that time, you were in a critical situation. He was avenging you. Wu seemed to have been immobilized. She was motionless as she stared at Tang Zheng. Her eyes seemed to have ripples. Even a fool could understand the emotions in her eyes. Lan Yu smiled knowingly and winked at everyone. Everyone understood tacitly and tiptoed away from the balcony. Even Gui Qiansui tactfully returned to the house. There were only 2 people left on the balcony. 4 eyes looked at each other. Too many feelings were revealed from each other's eyes. This was the first time Wu knew about Tang Zheng's crazy actions last night. This moved her more than when Tang Zheng saved her life. Because Tang Zheng's actions were too dangerous. What kind of place was the Kokyo? Who was the emperor? Destroying the Kokyo and killing the emperor. Even without thinking, one would know how difficult the task was. In this world, there were not many people who had the courage to do such a thing. But in order to avenge her, Tang Zheng did not hesitate to put himself in danger. This moved her to the extreme. She stared at Tang Zheng and could not help but walk to his side. She gently hugged his waist and leaned her face on his neck. She clearly said, in this life, no matter what you do to me, I will never leave you. In just a short sentence, she seemed to have exhausted all her strength. Then, her whole body softly leaned on Tang Zheng's body. Tang Zheng's heart seemed to have been punched. His hands also hugged her body. Chapter 707. Time flies, it has been a few days since Tang Zheng made a ruckus in the Kokyo. During this time, Tang Zheng and the others learned about the changes in the island nation from the TV. After the death of the emperor, the whole country was under martial law. Every port and airport was strictly controlled, and there were countless people patrolling every day. In addition, the royal family also sent out troops to investigate the whole country, and vowed to find the murderer even if they have to dig 3 feet into the ground. However, the storm did not completely stop, and there were many cases of people disappearing in many cities, and according to preliminary statistics, there were more than 10,000 people. An invisible fear shrouded the sky of this small place, and the people were in a constant state of panic. Fortunately, the place that Tang Zheng and the others chose was relatively remote, and the carpet search did not reach this place yet. In the past few days, Tang Zheng had been looking for a way to heal Gui Qiansui. However, no matter how many methods he tried, it was all in vain. That crack was still a ghastly sight. Without Gui Qiansui, they could not safely leave the island nation, let alone build a moving island in the sea. Fu Tangzheng failed again, and looked deeply at Gui Qiansui, and his eyes could not help but become gloomy. Immortal, it's all my fault for being useless, and dragging you down. Gui Qiansui blamed himself. Is identical to Gui Qiansui, you were injured because of me, and I did not protect you well. Tang Zheng's finger gently brushed the turtle shell, and said self-deprecatingly, I have always boasted about how great I am, but now I am helpless. My injury can only be healed after a long time, unless you have the Turtle Clan's Oracle Bone, then the wound can be healed in a short time. Oracle Bone. Tang Zheng's expression froze, and subconsciously sat up straight. What is an Oracle Bone? The oracle bone is the sacred object of the turtle clan. In ancient times, humans carved many mysterious and complicated words on the turtle shell of my clan. These turtle shells are the oracle bone, and have unpredictable power. It is the sacred object of the turtle clan. Not only can it heal injuries, but more importantly, it contains many of the turtle clan's secret methods, and if you practice these secret methods, your cultivation can advance by leaps and bounds. Gui Qiansui said with yearning. Then where are the oracle bones? Tang Zheng asked impatiently. Gui Qiansui shook his head. The history of the oracle bone is too long. It is said that it has been lost for a long time. The dragon clan once collected it, but no one knows where it is. Dragons? Tang Zheng's head twitched. Wasn't the Langia Pavilion the place where the dragon clan stored their treasures? Since this oracle bone was so powerful, it was naturally a rare treasure. Would it be kept in the Langia Pavilion? Do you think there will be oracle bones in Langia Pavilion? Tang Zheng asked. Langia Pavilion? Gui Qiansui's small eyes twitched. He was the one who told Tang Zheng about Langia Pavilion. He shook his little head and said, I don't know either. After hesitating for a moment, it added, the Langia Pavilion is a place where the dragon clan keeps their treasures. The oracle bone might really be kept there. Tang Zheng raised his eyebrows and was overjoyed. Okay, then I'll go to the Langia Pavilion to look for it. Go to the Langia Pavilion to look for it? Gui Qiansui was shocked. The Langia Pavilion was an important place for the dragon clan. Gui Qiansui had only heard of it and had never seen it with his own eyes. Even though he told Tang Zheng about the Langia Pavilion last time, he didn't know that Tang Zheng could directly go to the Langia Pavilion. Seeing Tang Zheng nodding seriously, Gui Qiansui knew that he was not joking. He said suspiciously, Immortal, only the dragon clan can go to the Langia Pavilion. We can't do it. Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously and said, I'll tell you a secret. I can also go to the Langia Pavilion. Really? Gui Qiansui was shocked. He raised his little head high. How is that possible? Isn't Langia Pavilion only accessible to the dragon clan? Tang Zheng muttered. The five-clawed golden dragon once said that only the dragon clan had the dragon seal, and he had it. Now Gui Qiansui said that only the dragon clan could go to the Langia Pavilion. Did he really become a member of the dragon clan? He shook his head and threw these messy thoughts to the back of his mind. He said seriously, I can really go to the Langia Pavilion. Since the oracle bone may be in the Langia Pavilion, then I'll have to try. Do you know which floor the oracle bone is on? Seeing Gui Qiansui's confused face, Tang Zheng shook his head and said, It seems that you don't know either. I'll have to explore by myself. It had been a month since the last time he entered the Langia Pavilion. Tang Zheng could enter the Langia Pavilion again. Now he could only go to the second floor of the Langia Pavilion. There were no oracle bones on the first two floors. It must be on the higher floors. But his cultivation was not there yet. But now there was a glimmer of hope. He had to try. Let's go to the third floor first and see if there are any oracle bones there. Tang Zheng clenched his teeth and said, Gui Qiansui, guard me. Don't let others disturb me. Immortal, are you going to the Langia Pavilion? Yes. How do I get there? Tang Zheng pointed at his own forehead, smiled mysteriously, and said, I'm going. He sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes, as if he was a senior monk in meditation. Gui Qiansui looked at him curiously and crawled around him. He did not understand how Tang Zheng went to the Langia Pavilion. At this moment, Tang Zheng was standing in front of the Langia Pavilion. The towering pavilion was so tall that people could only look up. Tang Zheng looked up and muttered to himself, Oracle Bone, where are you? He walked into the Langia Pavilion and went straight to the second floor. He stood at the stairs leading to the third floor. The stairs to the third floor were in front of him, but he did not dare to rashly step on it. His dragon god technique had only reached the second level. If he rashly stepped on the stairs, he would be mercilessly bounced back by the power of the Langya Pavilion. He would waste this opportunity to enter. The last trip to the Langya Pavilion was still fresh in his memory. All along, the dragons who entered the Langya Pavilion could only stay for a quarter of an hour. But last time, Tang Zheng unexpectedly broke the limit. He actually stayed for an hour, which was far beyond the limit of the Langya Pavilion. Moreover, at that time, he used the time in the Langya Pavilion to read many books on the first and second floor. He improved his comprehension and benefited a lot. Sharpening the axe will not delay the work of cutting firewood. Let's cultivate first and strive to break through the Dragon God technique. Tang Zheng was not in a hurry. Instead, he sat down in front of the stairs and focused on cultivating. The Dragon God technique was obscure and profound. Even for the Dragon Clan, it was very difficult. The same was true for Tang Zheng. He closed his eyes and silently operated the Dragon God technique. The true qi in his body flowed. The little golden dragon in his glabella surged and emitted a dazzling golden light. Tang Zheng's cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds since the last time he entered the Langya Pavilion. When he operated the Dragon God technique, he clearly felt that the places where he felt stagnant before had become unobstructed. The true qi flowed quickly in each vein and finally gathered in his glabella. Whoosh! A golden light shot out from his glabella. Gui Qiansui was startled by this scene and subconsciously staggered backward. But the next scene shocked Gui Qiansui again. There was a kind of trembling from the depths of his soul. In the golden light, a golden dragon was shining brightly. It was more dazzling than the surrounding golden light. However, this golden dragon did not fly out. Instead, it was in Tang Zheng's glabella. But Tang Zheng's skin seemed to be transparent, so the golden dragon could be seen clearly. In fact, Gui Qiansui had never seen a real dragon clan. When he was born, the South Sea Dragon Palace had been abandoned by the Dragon Clan. However, there were murals of the Dragon Clan in the South Sea Dragon Palace. Gui Qiansui had been looking at these murals since he was a child. The Dragon Clan in the murals had a majesty that made all living things bow down. Gui Qiansui had always yearned for the Dragon Clan and hoped that he could see a real Dragon Clan one day. Although this wish had not been realized yet, Tang Zheng's situation at this moment made him clearly feel something of the Dragon Clan, the Dragon Aura. Although the dragon in Tang Zheng's glabella was very young, the dragon aura it emitted was not something ordinary creatures could resist. At least, Gui Qiansui could not resist it and retreated in fear. What is going on? Why is there a dragon in the immortal's body? Is he also a Dragon Clan? No. Absolutely impossible. I have never heard of a person becoming a Dragon Clan. This is simply a fantasy. Gui Qiansui shook his head fiercely and denied this absurd idea. Once again, he looked at it attentively. The golden light on the little dragon's body became more and more dazzling, as if the golden light from all directions was absorbed by it. From all directions, countless true qi poured into the glabella and integrated into the golden light. Suddenly, the golden light shone and wrapped the little golden dragon in an instant. The two claws kept dancing, which was particularly eye-catching. Time passed by little by little. Tang Zheng felt that the true qi was endless, surging like a river, quickly pouring into the glabella and replenishing the golden light. He had already found a way. The increase of his cultivation was indeed very useful. The true qi of the 9th grade of fasting was really terrifying. After turning into golden light, it replenished the golden dragon little by little. The golden light hovered in the golden dragon's abdomen and gathered little by little. Lingering together, a small dragon claw slowly formed. Tang Zheng was slightly stunned and immediately overjoyed. This is the rhythm of the Dragon God's secret arts breakthrough. At this critical moment, he must not drop the ball. So, he quickly calmed his mind, calmed down, and stared at the golden dragon and the dragon claw that was in the process of forming. Time passed by little, the golden light gradually dimmed. But at this moment, the golden dragon's abdomen had already grown a third dragon claw. Wow! Gui Qiansui saw this scene clearly. Although he did not know what was going on, when he saw the dragon claw formed, he could not help but exclaim. This scene was too magical. It was not something that could be seen casually. Moreover, when the third dragon claw grew, the dragon aura of the golden dragon was obviously improved by a level. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.